To sign up, we will pick up the sign-up sheets, and only those individuals who have signed up will be allowed to speak. So if you would like to speak tonight, please go to the entrance and sign up on the sign-up sheet. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sandra Pacheco. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee. I will be presiding over tonight's Board of Trustee meeting in the Mayor Lopez's absence. This meeting is streamed on the Village website. The public can also participate via Zoom. Instructions and overall public participation, guidance for commenting is listed on the website and on page 6 of the meeting packet. The Village of Los Ranchos is providing the ability for the public to participate in hybrid meetings. As with any application, digital service, or software, the opportunity for failure can occur. Therefore, the Village is not responsible for the inability to connect to the meeting, either by Zoom, meeting link, or viewing via live stream. The meeting video and audio is recorded and will be available online after the meeting on the Village website. I'd like to go ahead and take roll call. Trustee Benavides?
Here.
Trustee Lewis?
Here.
Trustee Radnovich?
Here.
Thank you. If we all could stand, and if you all would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4, approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
I have a couple of changes I'd like to make.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and state your changes, Trustee?
I'm looking for them right now, Mayor Pro Tem. There's very small things. On line 322.
Trustee Ranovich, this is approving the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I was thinking ahead.
Okay, and I also, yes. Okay, the motion carries. Okay, is this now then where we would, oh, this is just the approval of the agenda, never mind. We're both getting a little ahead of ourselves.
We are.
Trustee. Okay, we're moving on to item 5, and this is general public comment. So participants wishing to speak on topics that do not appear on the agenda will be given 3 minutes. No action can occur on these items. Danielle, will you please proceed by calling up the individuals that signed up for general public comment, please?
Mayor Pro Tem and trustees, our first individual who wishes to speak is Ms. Amy Legant. If you would please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Amy Legant. I live at 511 Charles Place, Northwest, 87107. Board of Trustees. I understand that the Village of Los Ranchos is requesting $8 million for the purchase of open space during this current legislative session. That request is complemented by the recent bond election for another $8 million that was passed overwhelmingly by the residents of Los Ranchos. Consequently, I request that there be a transparent, open, structured method be put into place to gather and honor residents' input for how that money would be spent and which parcels would be considered for open space. This is part of the trust issue. And if that method is put into place, I know overwhelmingly the residents would appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Ms. Loretta Chavez-Smith. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Gordine McKenzie, if you would, please. Approach. Mr. David Montoya, please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
David Montoya at 517 Pueblo Solano Northwest. And what I'd like to talk about is kind of on the same note, but we also have a large loan that we've secured at the village for $500,000 on the Paseo property. And on that note, I would like to see that the village use the agricultural committee to kind of understand what's going on instead of just doing it all administratively, because there's very little public input as to what's going on. And I think it would help with transparency to hand this to a committee so that the trustees, who only have a very short time to look at all the agenda that comes out, that's just the way we do business here, that I'd like to see that this also, much like she just spoke about, related to the $8 million, is the $500,000 that the village is responsible for. And I'd like to see a committee to give us some transparency and to assist the board and let the village residents be a part of what's happening with this kind of expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nancy Nangeroni. Let's state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, Nancy Nangeroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail Northwest. Just a quick question about this process of speaking here at the meetings. I've only been coming to meetings for just under a year now, but in every meeting, the mayor has invited during this public comment period anybody who had not signed up and wished to speak, if they would like to speak. And that differs from the instructions as shown on the website and so forth. And I just wonder if we can't kind of bring the two into congruence. It doesn't seem like there's a million people who want to speak. And so maybe we could just make it a little less intimidating sounding, that if you don't sign up, you don't get to speak. When in fact, at least all the meetings I've been to, you do get a chance to speak. So I'm just asking for a little clarity, maybe review the written policies or whatever, and just from a friendly point of view, not from any kind of make wrong of anybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Don Bradley, if you would, please approach the podium.
Oh, excuse me, I just wanted to maybe talk, depending on how long I might go to stay on economic or one of those other boards while I'm here. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, that's it for public comment this evening.
Thank you, Danielle. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to item 6A, which is our presentations, and we'll go ahead and move on to A, which is Los Ranchos Elementary update. Craig Robinson, principal, and Cindy Smith, community school coordinator. Thank you. Come on up. And if you could state your name for the record and address, and you have 10 minutes if you need it.
Sure. Craig Robinson, 7413 Raymond Drive, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, and members of the board, thank you very much for giving us some time to present information to you and to those in attendance about Los Ranchos Elementary School. I've been the principal of Los Ranchos for 7 years now. I'm a proud APS employee and I'm a proud member of APS. I'm proud to be the principal of a school that has served the community since 1914. And I'm proud the administrator of a building where APS has continually improved and updated the building and its classrooms. In the last 3 years, there's been over $300,000 worth of improvements put into the facilities and into the school itself. Some of those improvements were new grounds. You can see in this picture right here, the satellite picture, that there's no grass in that picture. We've started to seed and grass that entire area, and we're almost through with that, and additional work on the grounds has happened in that area, so we're really excited about that for our kids, and I can tell you it's an amazing thing to not have kids come in with scraped up knees from falling in the dirt, because they're gonna play no matter what. But to have them being able to play on grass in Los Ranchos, I think sends exactly the right kind of message. We have secured the site with fencing and a secure vestibule, and that project was over $800,000. We put new carpet, paints, and blinds, countertops, and sinks throughout all the classroom buildings to update them. Water bottle filling stations were added as part of ESSER funds that came to the school, and additional updates are coming. If you don't know, the oldest part of Los Ranchos, the school is right here. It's built in 1947. It was built by this community. It wasn't built by APS. They added on additional parts of the school, which are right in here. They're the oldest parts of the school. They were built in 1953, and that's when it stopped being more of a community center and became more of a school. Then in the 1960s, additional buildings or additional classrooms were added. Another set of 4 classrooms were added in the 70s and the 80s. And our last set of buildings was built and started to be used in 2009. Those buildings continually get updated by APS. In fact, one of the challenges that we've had lately is that the heating units inside some of those rooms from the 50s have started to make a lot of noise. APS is coming in and replacing all those radiant heating units with new fans, new radiating units, and they're gonna do the same for the air conditioning on top of the building. Those are all projects that are upcoming. Again, hundreds and thousands of dollars additional infrastructure being added to Los Ranchos Elementary School. APS does a great job of updating and keeping our facilities up and working for students. And that's just kind of an update on the buildings and the facilities. Here's something quick that I want to talk about a little bit about academic focus. This year, I've definitely had an academic focus for our school about focusing on math and student growth in mathematics. I can't think of a more important thing to do for our students is to make sure they're confident and growing within mathematics. We have a growth model at Los Ranchos because a lot of our students are failing to meet proficiency, but we're never gonna get to proficiency if we don't talk about and get kids to be confident within math and see their growth every single time that they get into a classroom, and we regularly celebrate their growth and achievement. Right now, we're one of the top schools in APS has several zones. There's 4 of them. We're one of the top 3 schools in growth in APS for our zone. I can tell you kids are excited about learning about math and throughout the building, and that's been an amazing part of our growth this year. If you have heard of the Martinez-Yazzie settlement that was brought against the New Mexico Public Education Department, and we're required to make sure that we're meeting the needs of students in special education and underrepresented ethnic groups. We are meeting that with our math goal. Our math scores are phenomenal for those groups. We have, in addition, this year we have included a STREAM lab to the school, which was a grant. That partly came from a grant from one of our teachers who got a $22,000 from the APS Education Foundation to provide robotics and coding opportunities for all of our students 1 day a week for 45 minutes a day. And that is an incredibly great opportunity for all of our students. That teacher has been especially mindful of championing all of our students, but especially young girls in the Girls Who Code program, and to make sure that they're introduced to science, engineering, math, and computer science skills. I'm happy to be a part of the Village of Los Ranchos. I'm glad Los Ranchos Elementary School is there. I'm happy to support all the students and the families that are within our geographical area, and I'm very proud to be a part of a partner with this village. Ms. Smith is going to talk about some of the recent things that we've had happen as a part of our community school initiative, and that's something else that I would like to have her talk about. And then I'm going to follow up with just one simple, basically a request with a couple caveats at the end. Ms.
Thank
Smith.
you.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Cindy Smith, the Community School Coordinator. My address 7112 Pan American East Freeway, Northeast Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87109. I'd like to, first of all, thank Josh O'Halloran and Dominic for their tremendous support for our Nutrition and Gardening Genius Hour. As you probably saw in the article in the Village newsletter, the kids just love Garden Tuesdays, and they've been very, very focused and intent on watering and caring for their plants. And then, of course, whenever Josh and Dom, they always look forward to whatever animal, chicken or baby day-old ducklings that Josh and Dominic will bring for them to see. So again, thank you, Josh, for your support. And Josh and I will also be working on some grants along in collaboration with the North Valley Organics and Mandy's Farm as we continue to design and plan our sustainable family garden at Los Ranchos Elementary School. And thank you all again for your support.
Thank you.
So one thing I'd like to do is I would like to request that we make a periodic report to the board, if you would like that. I'm more than happy to do it. I love doing it. I want to talk to you about things that you're interested in, though. I just went with a blanket, here's what's going on at Los Ranchos Elementary School. But I would like to get some feedback from you all about what frequency that you would like that report and what the topics are that you would like me to update you on. I don't pretend to know what your interests are in education at Los Ranchos Elementary School. I can talk about a variety of topics, but I want to make sure that your time is honored and that the board's time is honored, and that we're meeting each other's needs for communication. I love coming to events like this to make sure that you know who's at the school, who you can come down and see, and if you've got questions, that we're answering them here in a format that gets to a lot of people. So I'd be happy to take that information anytime you want to, or if somebody wants to reach out to me later on, happy to get a response to that request.
Thank you. I think I speak on behalf of all my fellow trustees and the mayor. I think Los Ranchos Elementary comes up in conversation, I would say, in just about every meeting. So I think it's a great idea, and like I said, I think I speak on behalf of everybody up here on the board. We would love to hear from you on a regular basis. It's always great to hear the fabulous things that you're doing there.
Fantastic.
So
And
we'll be back in touch.
awesome. Thank you. And
This is just presentations. We're not really asking any questions at this point. I think if there are questions after, or maybe Principal Robinson will be available to answer some of those.
yeah, I can stick around if that's something that folks would like me to do. The other thing is that maybe that's something that we can set up within the process, or however we want to get that back and forth to go on more.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so we can maybe do that for the next time as well, if this is going to carry on for a while. I think you have a packed agenda tonight.
Yes, we do. Thank
Okay.
you so much. Thank you for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to 6B, Bernalillo County Fire Department update. Chief Greg Pettis. And Chief Pettis, you also have 10 minutes if you need it. And if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Greg Pettis, Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's 3843 La Plaza Drive, 87107. So Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, always a pleasure to be here before you. So we are entering our 14th year under a contract for Bernalillo County to provide EMS and fire service to the village of Los Ranchos. So this year we ran 1,000 calls exactly in Village of Los Ranchos, which is on par for what has been about the number of calls that we've ran. So we're not seeing an increase. We're also not seeing a decrease. So take that as you will. I can break down each of the call types for you just to give you kind of an idea. So of those 1,000 calls, 23 of them were confirmed fires, structure fires, shed fires, whatever type of fire there may have been. There are open space fires are included inside of that as well. So something that may have been started by electrical power lines being down or something such as that. So we had 23 of those. Obviously EMS has become the biggest thing that we do, and there were 827 of those in the village of Los Ranchos. And they range from severe trauma to just kind of basic sick calls as we refer to them. So there's across the whole gamut of them. And if you wish, Pro Tem and trustees, I can get you a more detailed breakdown of exactly what kind of calls those are if you wish. I didn't bring that with me tonight, just kind of giving you the overall general. Hazmat, we had 13 of those. Some of those include car accidents where there's chemicals that are spilled potentially. So there's a lot of different things that fall under hazmat. And then just general service calls, and this could be anything from helping someone up from the floor that fell with no injury. We do have calls to help people, get to their bed that maybe are unable to. It's a variety of things that come under just that general service call. Good intent, there were 47 of those, and that's the same type thing. That's your traditional saving a cat from a tree type thing that we do still run, believe it or not. And then the last is the false alarms, and we had 50 of those this year in the village. So all in all, nothing that just jumps out at me that's overly surprising. We've gone back and we've looked at the actual deeper criteria to see. If you remember last year when I spoke before you, we talked about when we see a certain pattern of a certain call type starting to take place within an area. So let's say a motor vehicle crash happening in the El Pueblo and 4th Street intersection. If we see multiples of those starting to occur, those start to rise to the top and bring some attention to us, and we start to look a little more deeply into what could be causing that. This year we didn't have any of those kind of items that really stuck out to us that have caused us to dive deeper into anything. So that's a good thing. It's just kind of happening all around the village, and no one particular type of incident happened in any particular area. And that's really all I have to report tonight. Again, we love doing the work that we do in the village. I've been with the village since 1998 as a volunteer firefighter, and my heart lies here. I mean, I was the fire chief, for those who don't know, back in 2005, and then we merged across to the county back in 2009. So we're approaching the end of the contract actually at 15 years. So we will have to go back and do some renegotiating of the contract. And Fred and I spoke about that today. We don't anticipate a lot of change there because again, we enjoy doing what it is we do and the service that we provide. So I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chief Pettis. Does the board have any questions for Chief Pettis?
Yeah, just one thing. So springtime is coming up, and it's going to get windy, and do you anticipate a lot of events for fires and open spaces and that sort of thing?
So Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, we are ready for whatever nature sends our way. We just completed all of our wildland recertification training, which we do every year, and we're prepared. This year we are going to have a little different approach, and some may like it, some may not like it, but we are putting an airboat on the river, and that airboat will be running on the weekends. We're not going to run it early in the morning. We're not going to run it late at night because it does have some amount of sound that comes with it. We ran that last year kind of as a test, and we were actually able to stop 5 fires in the Bosque before they even got going because these men and women were running up and down that river and getting to see it from a different vantage point than what we do, driving through the village or the South Valley or other North Valley. So that's one thing. We did have 3 homeless camps that they were actually able to get in and break up together with the sheriff's department. So we're going to really build on that going forward, because the majority of the fires that we see happen specifically in the Bosque are caused by individuals living inside there in that area, or doing something maybe that they shouldn't be in that area. So to your question, we're ready for whatever comes at us. I don't think we're going to see winds like we saw a couple of weeks ago. Let's hope that we don't, because that was a task and a half for us, more so for P&M than it was for us. But we're definitely ready for whatever comes this way, and I am confident in the training that our men and women have at this point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief Bettis. I just wanted to say I'm glad to hear that 1,000 sounds like a lot of calls, but I'm glad to see that there is nothing that is kind of rising to the top or needing more attention. It just kind of seems to be business as usual. And again, on behalf of the governing board, I'd like to just say thank you to you and your staff for all you do for the village. We appreciate it.
You bet. And
Mayor Pro Tem, I wanted to thank you as well. I have noticed what appear to be homeless people walking back and forth to the Bosque pretty regularly now through Los Ranchos. You guys have noticed that too, I take it.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee, yeah, we do. The village has its regulars, and I'm sure the Sheriff's Department will tell you the same. There is a group that we have, and they've been here. Some of them have been here back when I was actually the fire chief in the area, but we do have regulars. You also will notice a lot of the time in the village when there's a push in the city of Albuquerque to move homeless out, you'll see them start to come into the village. We used to see that a lot when I was even, out running those trucks. We would see spikes in it every now and then, but we are aware of it. Law enforcement's definitely aware of it. Our new sheriff, John Allen, is definitely on board and making sure that we do all we can to prevent that from happening in the village and the county as a whole. So yeah, we are aware of it.
Thank you. Trustee Ellen Lewis, do you have any comments or questions? I'm going to assume not. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and on behalf of our county manager, Julie Morgesbach, and our commissioners, thank you again for allowing us to proudly serve the village of Los Ranchos. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item C. This is the Business and Economic Development Committee final report. Dr. Harvey White. If you will state your name and address for the record.
I'm Harvey White. I live at 1020 El Pueblo Northwest here in the village. And I've been a longtime village resident. Madam Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, I have the distinct privilege this evening to present what we consider our final report of a voluntary committee titled the Business and Economic Development Advisory Committee. Early in 2022, the committee was chartered by village administration as a set of volunteers to reflect on and provide some advice referable to how we might further stimulate economic development in our village. We convened 8 meetings here in this room. We performed a tabletop interview process at the Agri Center early in last spring, and we conducted 2 surveys done on the web, one with businesses in the village and one with residents in the village. And together with those meetings and that exercise and those particular samples, you might say, of our citizens, we've come up with this final report. And for those that are viewing via Zoom, the report is rather lengthy, and I won't read the whole report, but I will distill it and paraphrase some of its most important components. At the beginning of this session, or our set of meetings, we paused and reflected on what our purpose was. And that purpose I shared with this group in an interim report last summer, but principally we recognized that we served as an advisory committee. No decisions, no actions, and so what we provide tonight is a series of recommendations requiring your further action. Some of them are rather complex. Some of them require some economic, some investment, you might say, economic investment, and some will require further exploration. But together, I think that they will actually make our village a better place. The other thing that I shared early in the interim report last summer is that our reflections at the very first and second meetings of our committee recognized that the health of our businesses and health of our business community resides on the shoulders of a healthy village. And for those of you who have seen me as a physician, you'll know that I very much stress lifestyle health as opposed to taking medicines. And this report reflects that. It includes 6 different initiatives that very much focus on the village as much as on the business community. So let me cover some of what those are. The first thing of these 6 recommendations regards the activities in the village. It's the impression of our committee that although we have a number of activities that the village sponsors, it would do well to enhance those and endorses actually even more such activities. We prefer that the activities that the village focuses on reflect the nature of the village and reflect to some degree our school community. So I'm glad that this report follows the previous report. The kind of activities that we're suggesting, and I've included them in a set of next steps at the end of the report, include a couple of activities that center on the business district. Simple ones that one may think about are parades. Could we have some sort of a parade? A 4th of July parade, a parade that might not, later in the year, might not compete with Corrales, et cetera, et cetera. Another recommendation that we have that amplifies this area of activities is to use banners along 4th Street to enhance the visibility not only of our village, but particularly of activities and the seasons and so forth and so on. So we would like to have further attention paid to that, as well as the calendar of activities that we want to put forth together, which optimally are well communicated, both in written form and on a website. So enhancing village activities was number 1. Number 2 is there's some concern that our village identity still is a little amorphous. It's not really clear. And so a very bold recommendation that we're making, which could be considered a legacy project, is to create a cultural center for the village. This cultural center that we recommend, and it could start very small, but become embellished, it would be a repository for the history of the village. From its early inception, and it is an Indian pueblo, to its later role even as a financial district for Albuquerque and along 4th Street and so forth and so on. And also, given what's transpiring with the National Park Service, looking at the Camino Real, we think there's grand opportunity to tie that in. And if done well, a cultural center could be an important center for activities for the whole village. It could be a place where we have meetings and where people come to for all kinds of activities if of a large enough scope and scale. So we encourage the trustees and the mayor to explore the concept of developing and creating a cultural center for the village in an appropriate location. Number 3, we have some concern that the village character is incompletely recognized. And I think if we all went around the room, we would all come up with various different ideas of what that village character looks like. We recommend that the trustees and the administration stimulate a branding exercise using an outsized resource that comes up and develops a very prominent and replicable brand for the village, one that we can use on all communications, can become familiar with different forms of advertising, can be amplified in our business community, and gives us kind of one locus or one concept that we can rally around. And we feel that that initiative, if well done, could significantly amplify the success of the businesses in our community. Number 4, we looked at various areas of business support that the village might lend to the business community. And we proposed those actually in a form of questions rather than answers. Those questions were stimulated from the survey that we did, both of our residents and our business community. Types of questions that we ask. Is our business environment attractive, and is it distinctly different from adjacent North Valley business districts? Can you tell where it is and where it's not? Number 2, parking. Is it adequate? Is it appropriately distributed? Is it readily accessible to customers, employees, and support vehicles? Signage. Is the business district and storefront signage adequate to provide wayfinding, and does it resonate with the village character? 4, is it visible? Is the business district and are the businesses in the district visible to pedestrians, traffic, car traffic, et cetera, et cetera? Marketing and advertising. Would our business community benefit from direct support from the village to promote growth in the form of marketing and advertising? And lastly, are there business and capital resources that could be lent in the form of grants or other types of financial aid to grow these businesses? So we asked some questions. Again, they're provocative questions, but they're worth answering. Number 5, and this is another pretty profound concept, is we recommend the formation of a community foundation. That is not a foundation that's independent from the village administration, the village political processes, et cetera, that has longitudinal interest in the village, interest in the village's well-being, you might say, composed of citizens and under a 501(c)(3) tax status, which enables it to do many things that the village proper can't do. There are many models for this in the nation, even here in New Mexico, and we encourage the village to explore the concept of a community foundation and catalyze its inception in the near term. And then lastly, we focused on business recruitment. From our survey, it was apparent that our citizens strongly desire certain businesses be imported into our village that would help it thrive better. And everybody echoes the Chase Hardware story, but there are others that would be also useful to us and would help us grow as a community and a village. That's a lot to digest. The next steps we provide for the trustees are 6 in number. We reduce the village activities to just 2 that you could reflect on. That is, develop 2 business district-centric activities and develop the banner program. Number 2, with a cultural center, we recommend chartering a small working group to explore the opportunity with specific goals outlined. Number 3, village branding. We recommend sending out an RFP to screen brand creation applicants and begin that process. Number 4, commence a signage program on the village to improve its visibility and branding. Number 5, charter a second working group to explore the concept of a foundation, a village community foundation. And lastly, regarding business recruitment, we recommend deferring that till timely, as this is a lot to consider. Importantly, there are a number of committee members, which total over 20, as well as other village residents that responded to our survey that would very much appreciate being involved in these processes going forward, such that if the village desires to form working committees on a couple of these topics, wants other influence on some of these recommendations, there is more than adequate energy to apply to that. That covers most of what I wanted to share with you. I also have for you available each of the two surveys and the responses for your review at a future time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. White. I want to personally thank you on behalf of the committee members for your leadership, for keeping us on track. My hope is that we as a board of trustees can now take steps to implement some of the items that you mentioned, and I think we'll work real hard at that during the budget process. And again, being a part of this group was wonderful, and I think it was very insightful and brought up some great ideas. And thank you again for the leadership in keeping it all together.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, we're going to move on to item D, which is the 4th Street Phase 2 Value Planning conducted January 31st through February 3rd, 2023. Chris Baca and Casey Gooden of Parametrics Engineering, Planning, and Environmental Sciences. If you will please just state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes if you need it.
All right, thank you. Chris Baca with Parametrics, 6300 San Mateo Boulevard, Albuquerque, 87113. Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, thank you for this opportunity to make a presentation to you. I do have a few slides. They'll be up on the presentation. As the title stated, this is looking at the revitalization project on 4th Street. And what village administration had done is had reached out, not to me, but to other governmental agency and explored some ideas, and that came through back to me to try to help in looking at what we call a value planning session for the project. An important step, and I think it's something that we held here the end of January, first part of February, here in this office, that over a 3-day period. Part of what we are looking for is, right now, post-pandemic, we're seeing lots of construction costs, things that we thought were affordable 3 years ago, or whether they're for a village or even personally, are more now not necessarily affordable. But yet the need is still there, and the village intent to continue the project beyond phase 1 to phase 2, which will go from Pueblo Solano out to Ortega, is an important part for the character of the village. And a lot of efforts has been put into that already in looking for what that would look like. And a lot of some of the basic parts of that are to reduce the 4-lane to 2 lanes with a center left turn lane, improve the landscaping, lighting, sidewalk for pedestrians. And so those are all important things. The next slide, please. This is just showing a look at what up in the corner of the typical section that's proposed, with where we'd have the turning lane down the middle, referred to a twiddle, 2-way left turn lane, if you ever hear that term. And again, this would go from Pueblo Solano north over Paseo del Norte to Ortega. What value planning is doing is an important process that can be utilized. And if I can go to the next slide. We had a goal for this, and a value planning study. It was held, as I said, the end of January, first part of February, to provide recommendations that will add value, reduce costs without reduction in benefit, recommend construction or design phasing, and provide direction on potential funding opportunities. A lot to occur in one area, but very important to moving this project forward. Real quickly, the process involved a bunch of people, which I want to show who they were, but involved a brainstorming. We brought in a group of about 15, 16 people, had some presentations on what was being done, and then said, okay, what are people's initial thoughts? What are some ideas? We went and viewed the project, and then we started brainstorming as a group just to come up with different ideas that may be considered by the village in looking at implementation of this. Part of the success of this was the diversity of the team that we brought together. If I could have the next slide. We brought in several consultants from Parametrics, a company I work with that have expertise in roadway design, drainage, planning, construction, and we also have another firm that was involved, Horrocks. But if you look at the list in here, we included many of the members of the village, including a trustee and a half. We didn't get full participation from the second one, but he was there, and it was great to have them involved. But you also look on here, and we had representation from the city of Albuquerque, from the Mid-Region Council of Governments, and quite a large contingency from the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And with that, I would like to, the value they added, I thought was tremendous, and I think that's something for the village to consider. In particular, at DOT was Jill Mosier, who's the assistant district engineer, and her efforts in making 6 staff from DOT available for 3 days to come work on this project. Anyway, with that, what we did then with this group and looking at it is we basically broke into then different groups to look at some major areas that were identified in the project. We came up with quite a list. Currently, that list is being run back through for review and any final comments, and then the final recommendations, that will be the village and the design team that would go through and say, yes, these make ultimate sense for implementation. But there are a few major ones. If I can have the next slide, I just want to point out of where we thought value would be added. One of them is with the storm drain and stormwater handling, and this faded into to the construction and also pavement. So there were recommendations in this to look at relocating the design of the storm drain and shifting it from the center of the roadway to one side or the other. That would help with construction, because if you build it down the middle, you basically have to protect that ditch with concrete wall barrier, push traffic to the outside. It limits accessibility and prolongs construction. If we can move it off to one side, contractor has better access so we can maintain it. The second part of that was they were looking at the outfall areas of where water potentially ponds, as if we can find other areas within the right-of-way or even some smaller right-of-ways and put some additional ponding locations, we can shallow up the storm drain. Again, speeding up construction and reducing construction costs fairly significantly, and that also reduced significant costs in the maintenance of traffic through that time. Pavement was another part that was looked at, looking at ways that we could actually rehab. We had various construction people from DOT that looked at that with their expertise and coming up with ways that maybe that could be a cost savings. Again, these alternatives aren't looking at changing any of the overall value that the proposed project gets, but finding ways that we can implement it with cost savings through construction methods and materials and things. We also looked at the intersections. There's 2 roundabouts that are proposed on this. We did recommend that one of those be considered to be removed, keeping the one at El Pueblo. But the other location has pretty significant utility conflicts that would be very expensive and disruptive to try to construct. And the other one is then the county has their project that is to the north. At Ortega, they have the county line. They have a different typical section than what the village does. And so we spent quite a bit of time, and we had representation from the county show up, but looked at alternatives and have a good start on where that can be to make the 2 projects work together and be a little bit harmonious. And the last thing that we covered, and this value goes back to, again, Jill Mosier, who deals a lot with funding, but one of the tasks was, how can you pay for this? And we did come up with a lot of alternatives, a bunch of recommendations for grants and funding processes and things that would be open to the village. And I think that was pretty successful. So again, it's a project that the village wants to keep going. I think this value planning session with the participation from village staff and the consultants and the other agency staff was a big success. So with that, I'd happily answer any questions that there may be.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Trustee Lewis?
I have none at this time.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to get to questions at some point about the project, but we thank you for the valuable look at this project. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully we'll implement some of those moving forward.
So, and on behalf again of myself and the team, because I did get multiple comments from participants from DOT and others, and they were very excited to be able to be involved in the project and come in and bring their expertise and do what they do, not on an everyday basis, but what they were trained to do in their planning and their engineering. And so they had a very enjoyable time. And again, the village was a great host for the meeting in doing it. And so hopefully the value will definitely pay out for the village and the members of the community here.
That was quite the list that you brought together. It's excellent. Maria? Absolutely.
I'd like to thank our consultant for this. It was an incredibly valuable 2.5 days and the participation of the trustees. But essentially, what we came up with in this exercise was significant ability to reduce costs and scheduling in this project. And the coordination between the Village of Los Ranchos and Bernalillo County, where their project coming from Alameda will meet up with ours in the Ortega area or carry on over into. And to be able to sit in this room with our peers, and not just consultants, but City of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, Council of Governments, and DOT, that cost us nothing. These individuals with tremendous amount of expertise volunteered their time and their brain power to this project. And I think that this is an incredible way to approach a project, and we intend to do this on the Chavez Road project as well. But I would encourage any other projects that we have the opportunity to move forward, that this kind of practice is just incredibly valuable to just there's so many moving pieces. And in that 2.5 days, we were able to pull them all together and create basically a roadmap for moving forward. And I'm really excited for you to see the final report, which is
Excellent.
Almost ready.
Trustee Benavides.
I don't have a question, but I want to second what Maria Rinaldi said, and I think there was a lot of suggestions that cut costs significantly. So without sacrificing the benefits that we're proposing in this redevelopment of 4th Street. So thank you for your efforts. I really believe that it was a good thing that we did. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 7, approval of the minutes. 7A, minutes, February 8th, 2023, regular meeting. I need a motion to approve the minutes for the February 8th, 2023 meeting. Need a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Oh, wait, I have some changes.
You want to amend it?
Yeah, I just
Do
amended.
we take the roll call first, or do we amend first? Okay. Okay,
They're very small. On line 322, it says it is substantially further to the other buildings than the other buildings, I believe is what I said. So that's line 322, Danielle. And I think there was one more, hold on. Of course, I could be wrong. Yes, I'm wrong. Everything's good.
thank you. Trustee Benavides, you didn't have any changes?
Yeah, actually,
Now that we mention it?
Since now that you mentioned it. For the minutes on line 215, where you're, let's see, this is, just line 215. The sentence is, "This is the first time I have seen these numbered switch this fiscal year." I didn't listen to the video, maybe I said numbered, but it makes more sense to say numbers as plural.
Thank you.
Thing too.
Trustee Lewis, do you have any changes?
I was not in attendance, so I have no comments.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
I'll abstain since I wasn't.
Okay. Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Pacheco? Yes. The motion carries. Okay, item number 8, departmental reports. The departmental reports are included in the packet and reflect the activities as listed. Ms. Rinaldi would like to expand on her report. Ms. Rinaldi?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. A quick update on all of the projects going on. We are in final audit closeout with DOT pending their visit to do a file review on the project, but the construction project is closed out and we are basically considered closed. We still have to get through the audit, but that's yet to be scheduled. We have a couple of outstanding technical issues to deal with, nothing to do with construction though. Final engineering, again, I cannot tell you enough what the value planning exercise was, and you will see in greater detail some of the recommendations, and we will be reviewing those with BHI as we proceed to the task order for final design on the project. At this time, we have coordinated with Bernalillo County. Their project includes a bike lane from Alameda Boulevard and to the village limits at Ortega. We have a working agreement at the moment through the design process to terminate their bike lane beyond our village limits at a logical termination point. We are considering a couple of places, primarily at the Paseo del Norte Trail, the trailhead at Calle Pajarito, and a couple of other options that are being flushed out now. Bernalillo County has just issued their RFP for design services. So as they get their professional design team on board, that coordination with us will be happening on a regular basis, and you will receive updates on that. We intend to have an initial public information meeting as soon as we execute our design agreement with BHI on 100%. That will be held in April, and it will be a review of how we got to the alternative selected in 30% design and any changes that we are going to incorporate into that to bring before the public for their input, and to give a preliminary schedule and to explain where we are in the funding process. By that time, we'll know if we received any funding through the legislative process, and we have a couple of other applications out that we hope to be able to give some information on at that public hearing as well. So that will occur in April. And you have before you tonight the 2020 legislative agreement for $400,000 for construction funding for the first phase of phase 2A. And the reason that that's before you tonight, a year after last year's legislative session, is we opted to go into the second bond sale. Instead of receiving our funds after the January bond sale last year, we said we would take it in December. So those bonds were sold, the agreement's been executed, and you'll see that resolution before you tonight. I think I'm going to just move on to, if you have any questions on the pending applications, we have presented this project for inclusion in the Transportation Improvement Program through the Council of Governments. I did that presentation on the 21st of February, and that's going through the application process now. We still have to decide what we're going to do with the New Mexico Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund money offered to us. That will come together in the full funding discussion as we move forward on that. And unfortunately, we were not funded for the federal rural surface transportation stimulus money at the federal, and unfortunately, no one in New Mexico was funded under that. We're still waiting for feedback on our application, but we've just recently heard that we saw the list of projects funded, and there was no one from New Mexico. So I anticipate that they will send us a formal announcement of not being funded and maybe give us some feedback on that application. Agri-Nature Center improvements, you probably noticed that the entrance and roadway improvements, I had that highlighted yellow. I was hoping to be able to pull something together before this report was due, but we have managed to negotiate with Franken Construction, the responsive quoter under the state contract, to be able to get a project. So the project, and we just issued yesterday the notice of award. It is pending approval. The funding for this is 2 legislative appropriations, and we need their sign off. I had to submit an entire packet to obligate these funds. But the project is actually $20,000 under what we have available for this project. And it is entrance improvements to replace the culvert and deal with the crossing, a concrete drive pad of some decorative nature, and the full electrical for lighting and gate improvements on a future phase, but the electrical will be put in. That was an alternative that we were able to fund. And most importantly, for Joshua's purposes, is we will be grading the alignment of the roadway. No other improvements, but getting the roadway alignment in so that there now is the functionability of the rest of the area, so that he can relocate things like the raised garden beds, and he can now not have to deal with moving things in a future phase of construction, and can prepare everything along that alignment. So the NOO was submitted today to the state of New Mexico for approval. As soon as we have that approval, we will execute the notice of award, notice to proceed. This project will be done by May 30th. So it's a quick project. It's a good project, and I'm glad we were able to pull it off. And we're still in the design phase with Mara Reardon, Wilkinson Miller. They are almost at the point of having some construction documents ready to review for the outdoor classroom kitchen area. And Joshua may have had that in his report as well. But we'll be meeting with them in the next couple of weeks to determine how we're going to proceed. If we're going to do full requests for quotes, bids, or if we're going to try to utilize the construction state price agreement. So we'll be figuring that out as we move forward. The roadway funds, we were at the point where we had to decide, are we actually going to be able to do this because some of those funds are expiring, or are we going to spend them on something else? The only funds that are going to expire for the classroom is a junior bill allocation that we received last year for $100,000. We have an additional $75,000 from a straight legislative appropriation last year, and now we have the $20,000 available to us on that was excess budgeted for the roadway that we had a savings on. So that project will be moving forward considerably in the next couple of months. You saw that we are beginning the Albuquerque asphalt will begin to pulverize and repave both east and west sides of Taylor. I believe that's the 15th of March. They will be complete March 17th. They'll be complete by March 31st. And I am submitting on the 15th of March, that's next week. I'm submitting the next request for funding to DOT. You see the list of roads for repaving. I just quickly want to tell you what they are. Mullen Road, 6th Street, El Paraiso, Sandia View off of Guadalupe Trail, Mullen to Chavez, Guadalupe Trail, Chavez to Tyler, and Charles Place. We are also doing significant crack seal throughout. There's a list of Los Poblanos Place, Los Poblanos Court, Chavez Road, west of Rio Grande Boulevard, Los Ranchos Road, Vineyard Road, El Portal and El Prado Roads, Redondo Court, Roadrunner Road, Acequia Trail, La Senda Lane, Ranchitos Road, west of Rio Grande Boulevard, and Bosque Road. So that project we're submitting, this is 25% our match 25% for what is to be applied for, and that's a pretty quick turnaround. We should know the status of that in June, and we will budget accordingly. You'll see that as proposed in the budget. And the last thing I want to just briefly talk about is the Chavez Road multi-use trail. We're making some interim improvements. Parametrics actually is scoping 2 raised crosswalks that will be located just slightly west of the existing one between the 2 subdivisions, just west of Guadalupe Trail. And then another one at, Fred, remind me the name of the road? Neighbor. And those will be raised crosswalk. They have the effect of traffic calming. Their primary purpose is safety, but it does reduce speed in the areas as well. The thing about raised crosswalks, speed humps, speed bumps, and all that, you cannot reduce the existing speed limit as posted on a roadway. You have to be able to place these appurtenances in the roadway and still maintain 25 miles an hour. So that these are not meant to reduce below 25 miles an hour. They're meant to keep people at that speed limit. So those are two interim improvements that'll be made. But we just, Danielle Cedillo Molina and I just finished the RFP for design service, for professional services for survey and right-of-way preliminary engineering report on the Chavez Road project. That will be advertised in the Albuquerque Journal this Saturday. There's two scheduled advertisements, March 11th and March 20th. Proposals are due to us by March 31st. And there's some required language in there. This is just right-of-way survey, preliminary engineering to include utility survey, topo, geotech, all the things that we need to determine what conditions we're working at before we even go to design of the project. And the last thing I want to tell you about is we have a proposed scope on the transportation systems analysis that we are reviewing now. We'll have our final review on that Tuesday, and we will be presenting a scope and an agreement with a cost to the administration for review and consideration before the 1st of April. So you will see that as well. And if you have any questions.
Thank you, Maria. I'd like to go trustee by trustee just to see if there are any questions for Maria before we get on to the other department reports, if that's okay. Trustee Lewis, do you have any questions or comments for Maria?
First, I'd just like to add my sentiment. The value planning meeting for 4th Street was fascinating. I was so impressed with the intelligence of people in that room and the work that they did. It was just, you know, kudos to Maria and everybody that put it together. It was a tremendous meeting. Looks like Maria, I had some questions on the entrance and roadway improvement project, but you've answered those. No, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Benavides.
Yeah, two questions, and the first question is a lead into the second one. So Phase 2A, the boundaries for that are Pueblo Solano and Ranchitos, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then 2B is north of Ranchitos to, is it El Pueblo or the overpass?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, trustee, that's yet to be determined. That's
Okay.
one of the things that we were discussing in the value. What we did come up with was specifically Phase 2A, which is to Ranchitos Road. And Mr. Baca alluded to the reduction in scope by eliminating one of the roundabouts. It was the roundabout at Ranchitos that will be eliminated from that phase. There will be some additional intersection improvements proposed to deal kind of with the offset, but that is the boundary of Phase 1.
So
2A.
we are planning on not having a roundabout at Ranchitos?
That is correct.
Okay. Because if we did, the next question would be which phase would include the roundabout? Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Trustee Benavides. Trustee Radnovich?
And I have a couple questions and a couple comments. I really would like you to explain the design that is recommended and the design that the value planning group put together is going to be brought to a public meeting. Are the are the recommendations of the value planning work going to be brought forward as part of the design, or will the public have some say in where we go from here? I know that the design has already been picked. There's really not that much room for public input at this point. How will that all fit together?
Certainly. Madam Pro Tem Trustee, just a point of clarification, this was not a design exercise. This was a constructability, materials,
I realize that.
infrastructure, yes, progression of construction kind of thing. So there's not very much impact on design. One of the examples that Mr. Baca used was moving the drainage trunk from the center of the road to one side or the other of the street for constructability, reduction in cost. Those are the kinds of things that we will now meet with BHI so that to see if they have an answer to these, if there was a particular reason why they recommended it down the center rather than either side of the road, those types of things. So we still have to review the final report from parametrics with BHI, but that it has no impact on design other than things like the removal of the roundabout. The design alternative as selected is what we are moving forward with. So what we'll be discussing with the public is, again, the reminder of how we got to the point that we're at, what the funding available is, and the first phase that we're going to move forward with to talk about some ability to add to the design elements to bring a greater aesthetic value to that phase specifically, and some of the options. And this is the point where things like landscape and lighting will be discussed, because those things have not. At this point, we have selected the configuration of the roadway and done preliminary drainage and preliminary engineering for all those other things that I won't get into because they're technical reports. But that's the intent of the meeting in April, to bring everybody up to speed, to make notice that this project is moving into this 100% design phase, and to talk about a schedule and benchmarks that will allow throughout that phase more public participation.
So the public won't have any input on the design. I think it's been very engineering centric. I've said that many times before, and I still think it is. I think one other thing, I think that the bike path, taking the bike path out of the design is a really bad idea. And I understand the constraints physically, but I think that we need to encourage bicyclists to use that road, not discourage them to use it. At the very least, we ought to have a sharrows, not just an exclusion of bike paths. Just saying.
Okay.
Yeah. I would like to see. So anyway, that's just my opinion. I think it's the design is very DOT centric, and I don't particularly like the way it's happening, but you know, that's what it is, and so that's where the money's coming from. So I understand that. I would very much like to see the monument design that you mentioned in your report that MRWM is working on, since we already had some work on that in the past. I had a question, Maria, about the pending applications.
Yes.
The application with the NMED, is that specifically for, could you explain that a little bit?
Certainly, Madam Pro Tem Trustee. That is an offer for a low-interest loan that it was a creative ask to try to fund the drainage portion of the project. So it was, the gist of my argument was, in order to save the use of potable water for irrigation, we'd like to use stormwater. And they said, yes, this is great, we love this. And they accepted our application and they made this offer to us.
I see.
And we have yet to see how to incorporate that into the project.
Great,
So it's an unusual funding source to use, but we got it.
that's great. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted a little clarification. The road up to the Agri-Nature Center, none of the road would actually get built. It's only the portion at the entrance?
Madam Pro Tem Trustee, so the entrance improvements will be made, all of them, all of the infrastructure for the entrance as engineered. What will happen with the remainder is the roadway alignment as engineered will be graded, but there won't be any other improvements made to the roadway itself.
I see.
It gives us the backbone for the future phase, for hopefully the funding that's forthcoming to be able to complete that project.
And will the planters and the buttresses on either side of the existing gate remain? The adobe-looking wall that's on either side of the entrance?
Madam Pro Tem Trustee, there are some improvements to that. I sent you the drawings.
Long time ago, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember.
they haven't changed. So there is the removal of all of that. It's all demoed. There is a new culvert put in. There are new walls built. Yes, the crossing
So the existing wall
Will be
and the
demoed.
planters just goes away?
will be demoed, yes.
That probably would have been a way to save some money too.
Well, we need to make room for the whole gate improvements. That was just an engineering decision that was made.
I think that's it. That's all I had. Thanks, Maria.
Certainly.
Thank you, Trustee Radnovich. Maria, I just have one question. With regard to the raised crosswalks on Chavez, you said they are going out for bid in the next month or two?
So those are interim improvements, Madam Pro Tem. That is being scoped right now, and we will receive a scope and a fee on those by next week so that a decision can be made as how quickly we can do them. That's sole and separate of the Chavez Trail project.
Right. And so when would we actually see an idea of when we might see these installed?
We would hope to have these, we would hope to be under construction of these by best case scenario, May, probably June. But we can do these things pretty quickly if we get all of the information quickly.
Very good, thank you.
Certainly.
Is there a question?
I think that we just,
This is departmental reports, not others.
Danielle?
Mayor Pro Tem, typically we don't have questions during this period of departmental reports. However, I would recommend anybody from the public who wishes to reach out to Ms. Rinaldi is more than welcome to. If you'd like to speak to her after the meeting, she'll be here. Anything that you would like to discuss regarding her report, you're more than welcome, and she'll be available to answer those unless, Mayor Pro Tem, you choose otherwise.
Well, we have a long agenda, so I would prefer, if you do have questions, that you reach out to Maria. I mean, she's readily available during the day, and I think she can answer any of your questions, and I really would like to move along. We have some important, obviously, other village business to get through. So with that, thank you, Maria, and I think we'll go ahead and move on to the other departmental presentations. Are there any other questions with regard to the department reports? I'll start with Trustee Lewis. And this is for any of the reports that appeared in the packet.
Okay, hang on just 1 second here as I go through. I had a question for Fred on the raised crosswalks, but I think they've been answered, so I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lewis. Trustee Benavides.
Yes, the Agri-Nature Center, Joshua. First, I just want to commend you that, you're working with Los Ranchos Elementary on STEM projects and with Explora. And so I think that's great. I've talked to you about this before, that we need to make an effort to show the value added of the Agri-Nature Center, and some of the things, that are being done are good examples of the value added to the village of Los Ranchos, including the matanza that we had. That seems to be a very successful event. And it's interesting that we have two great events here in the village. One is the matanza, and the other was the lavender in the village. And both of those events have a lot to do with agriculture. So I keep thinking there may be more things that we can do like that, given that we're so successful with events, and we have such a great place to showcase for those events. So so about the question about the matanza, what are some of the lessons learned for the matanza?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. We have a lot of lessons learned. We have brainstormed, and we have a whole whiteboard full of lessons learned.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some things went well, and a lot of things were growing pains. 200 people last year. We were able to manage just fine. Going up to 400. There's a lot of things we will do differently this next year. Some of those things off the bat, I think the lines were extremely long, and it took too long to get food. And the plate portion size, I don't think was enough. And so I think some of those things we need to do differently. I think also, this event is a great thing. I think if we could raise funds for an agricultural thing, whether it's scholarships for kids to attend farm camp or something like that, but do it for a cause, just like Lavender in the Village does, I think that would also bring people in and who would want to spend money because they are supporting something. I wasn't prepared for your question, so I don't have the notes in front of me of all our things that we want to do differently. I think having a lot more chefs on hand or cooks to be able to have the food, be able to keep it warm, multiple lines so that people can get through that. Having the vendors, I think, was a nice addition this year. We did a survey with them. They really enjoyed it. Apparently, they did quite well. They would like to have more vendors there, so that they said the more vendors you have, it attracts more people out to them. So those are just some of the things off the top of my head but we do have a lot of those written down, and I can share those with you.
Yeah, thank you, Joshua.
And I would appreciate your feedback as well, whenever you want.
I mean, the line was long. I was fortunate enough to, get there a little early enough where I didn't have to wait too long. But I mean, I would say people had a great time, regardless. It was a pretty nice event. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Trustee Benavides, for any of the other reports?
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's
Joshua.
all I think. Let's see. Let me make sure. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Radnovich?
I had a couple. I think the Agri-Nature Center is doing great work as well. So thank you, Josh. I had a couple of questions, actually just one for Fred. And Fred, it's just a small one. There were 79 welfare checks in December, and then another 131 in January. Is that when the fire department, when Chief Perea sends his troops by and checks on people?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radovich, no, those are what the sheriff's office does. And what those are, they call them welfare checks. In my day, we called them frequent patrols. They would be if somebody called in and said, you know, can you keep an eye on our neighborhood? We've had some burglaries or whatever. And so the deputies will then go and patrol that and document it with the dispatch. Some of them are self-initiated, and some of them are, you know, because of burglaries or whatever. But they do that and they log it into the dispatch center, so it's logged as a formal record.
I see. Is that a lot? I mean, that seems like a lot to me.
Not actually; those are pretty low numbers. I think we've had them as high as a couple of hundred at times, depending on the area.
Thanks, Fred. Sure. I don't know if this is part of your report, Maria, or if it's part of Josh's. The MRGCD agricultural loan is that not something that is coming? Okay, that's yours, Josh. It's the.
Oh no, that was not in my report.
Okay, so.
Is it Ann? But if
it might
you have
be
a
Ann,
question, I might be able to answer it.
So I just had a couple of questions on that. The footings that were found in the field that were taken out.
Yes.
Were those part of the old Yanamoto's nursery and tree farm and actually farm at one point in time?
It was, Mayor Pro Tem, Trustees, it was a slab of concrete.
Slab?
Yeah, it was a slab that was 45 feet wide by 180 feet long. And it was about 6 inches underground. And it was from that time, I believe, I mean, I'm not sure what structure was on top of it. Could have been a greenhouse.
Wow, that's a lot of slab. And I
very large
assume
slab.
that Mr. Montoya, when he was taking care of the open space, that was there. It was just underground.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Trustees, that it was about 6 inches down. Alfalfa was grown on that field amongst other grasses, and you could kind of see in satellite imagery and also just when going out there that was kind of somewhat of a dead zone because there was no space for the roots to go down.
On the plans that you have in the report, or that the village has in the report, it shows it mentions a bioswale, but I don't really see one in the design or the construction. Is there a bioswale in the project?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustees, I believe that bioswale is talking about the natural area that's where the grama grass is, as well as the cottonwoods. That's there to hold runoff.
It shows on the plan on page 60, and it shows a bioswale, but I don't really see one. So I was very curious about that. Bear with me. It looks like you really cleaned up the site. I did have some questions about one other thing. There were orange on the plan and I apologize that you're having to do this because I don't know whose report this is, but on page 73, it shows orange areas indicate areas that have been reclaimed and will be planted. What does that mean exactly, reclaimed? Is that where the concrete was, or what do you?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustees, there will be a little bit of acreage. A half acre was where David Montoya had his corrals area and the place where he kept the hay, the bales of hay. So that has, of course, the corrals were removed, and that area will be incorporated into growing area, as well as probably in that orange area is a little bit of space where that slab was that will now be able to be grown on more easily.
The only overall thing I wanted to say about that whole plan is that it's an agrarian kind of plan. And I think we should do some kind of master plan for that area as opposed to just cropping. Because there's some parts of the open space that I think are park-like, and I think people see it that way, especially those on the north side of Paseo. So at some point, I think we ought to do more of a park and open space plan as opposed to a cropping plan. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, we will be adding new trails that aren't currently there to be able to go around the whole space as well as down the middle where the pipeline is. And of course, where the trees are, where the old what's called the cathedral, or I've heard it called the wedding chapel, I'm not sure what it is, that area will now, it won't be with cattle in it anymore. So we're looking to put benches in there and make that more of a, open space birding area. Of course, the areas with the grandma grass that David Montoya put in and that has cottonwoods and stuff, that will remain. So no areas are being put into agriculture that weren't already in agriculture. Now, except for, as I said, I guess corrals are agriculture. So that isn't adding any agriculture. But and also all the acreage, the long strip on the eastern side of the fields that we were talking about with the pipeline, most of those, if you see the crop plan, are cover crops that will, hopefully promote wildlife habitat, birds, cranes, those kind of things, because it's a lot of seed crops and pollinators and those kind of things. So that will not be cut and baled or anything. That'll just be grown for the benefit of the soil and pollinators and birds and those kind of things, wildlife habitat.
Thanks. I have no other questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I do have some comments and some questions just real quickly on the reports. Mayor Lopez, in his report, talks about meeting with the governor's office. I also wanted to say that Anne and Maria and myself were also able to meet with the governor's office through Fred. Fred made a contact, has a contact there, and was able to get us in during our time up in Santa Fe, and we were able to meet with the governor's office and ask for more funds. So thank you, Fred, for that opportunity. Like Trustee Radnovich mentioned, the sculpture, looking forward to hearing more about that. I know this was on Anne's report, and I'll follow up with her as well. But it would be great to hear kind of what's happening there. And this may be a dumb question, but infiltrators, are those drains? Okay, that's what I thought. And then with regard to the Del Norte open space, and I don't know if this is one that Anne can answer, or maybe Joshua, or, well, Maria, this isn't kind of your purview, but do we know what kind of trees are going to be planted, and then how they're going to be watered, and whose responsibility it will be, I guess, for the trees that are being planted on the berms on Paseo del Norte? Do you know, Joshua?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. The proposal for trees along that berm would be for something that's evergreen, like an Afghan pine. So that way, as far as noise pollution or even just unsightliness of Paseo del Norte, it'll be able to provide that protection in the winter as well as the summer. If you put deciduous trees, you don't get that benefit in the wintertime. So, and we're also looking at some tall native grasses and some things that are drought tolerant. As far as irrigation, we do have a well on the property, and we would be running, some polyline with some drip to be able to water those.
Great, thank you. And before you go, just quickly on the Matanza, it was wonderful. I think everybody that was there had great comments about the event and bringing community together. And I saw so many others from outside the community coming into our village for this event. So job well done. I know you mentioned that you're keeping a list of what worked, what didn't work. Is there, who can the public contact, I guess, with suggestions or thoughts or ideas that might make it an even better event?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, trustees. Please contact me. I think I see, because I spent a lot of time on it, I see all the things that went wrong, but I know we missed things, and I think that moving forward with these large events that, we have a skeleton crew for event planning, and none of us are trained event planners. So I think it would be good even to put together a small committee, a small group to help throw these events. We'll get new ideas and we'll be able to improve upon them. I think there's always lots of room for improvement. So please contact me with any suggestions and we'll make it better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All
Mayor Pro
right.
Tem, I did have one more question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Maria, I had one more.
Thank you, Joshua.
How did we hire parametrics, since they're not under our on-call, for those raised crosswalks?
Madam Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich, State Procurement Code, our procurement code for the Village of Los Ranchos allows us to hire for professional services under $60,000 based on scope and fee. And there's someone
And we just went directly to them.
and there's
didn't have
there's someone that we're working for now and could turn it around quickly. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that it? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to item 9A, financial business, discussion and approval of the February 2023 cash report. Treasurer Fisher.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Before you is the cash report for February 28th, 2023. Ending balance is $11,937,961.24, which is an increase of $545,420.10 for the month. Year-to-date excess of revenues over expenditures is $2,069,569.02.
Thank you. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the February cash report.
Motion to approve the February cash report.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body? Trustee Lewis?
Yeah, I have a question for Tammy. Good evening, Tammy. I just wondered if you had any comments or feels or what you're seeing regarding our gross receipts.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees, Trustee Lewis. Right now, what I'm seeing with gross receipts is that it's pretty much looking like we may end just slightly over where we ended last year. We've seen a slight increase in most months, but as you can see on the revenue page, the last 2 months, there was a decrease for the last, from last year to this year. And so based on that, I think that we're gonna end, we anticipated where we were hoping for about $1 million over what we did last year. And based on the trends right now, I don't think we're gonna hit that $1 million extra. I think it may be more along the ballpark of potentially 600,000, just depending on what happens. Fingers crossed we'll still see the $1 million. But I think we will see an increase from last year, just not as big as we thought.
Thank you, Tammy.
Any further, Trustee Lewis?
No further questions.
Thank you. Trustee Benavides?
Yes. So a question for Tammy. So, yeah, I'm looking on page 80, titled Revenue Information for February 28th, 2023. And so I'm observing that February has always been our best month for the last 7 years. Is there an explanation for that?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, Trustee Benavides. So one of the reasons why February, and are you speaking to just GRT?
Just GRT, yes.
So basically, I haven't gone in to do the research just on GRT as to why that is one of our better months, but you are correct that there is a trend that February is one of the better months, one of the best months that we have. And that is something that we could potentially look into. The state does provide us with a breakdown of different categories for the GRT. And now they don't go into complete specifics over it in the report they provide. However, that is something that we could look into and just kind of see if there's even a trend within a certain category, whether it's retail or construction or other services. And kind of see where that's coming from. That's definitely something we could do.
I would recommend that we look into it. Thank you. Let's see, maybe. Okay, on page 82, titled Statement of Revenues and Expenditures. So under the column called cash basis period to date actual, we have a lot of zeros in there. Does that need to get filled in at a later point?
So Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides, so this is actually specifically to one fund, and it is the American Rescue Act. The reason why there are a lot of zeros in that is we didn't, in the month of February, we did not receive any revenue, and we did not receive expend any funds out of this specific fund. We will not receive any more revenue into this fund. We have already received the full amount that we anticipate for the Rescue Act, and there will be expenditures coming out in the months to come, but this month there just was no expenditures. If you look over at the second to last column on this sheet where it says cash basis YTD actual, you will see there that we have expended some this year in the past months.
Oh, you mean where it adds up to 680,000?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and the cash basis that we have is 1,127,000, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's quite a bit left, but that's there's a plan on where that will be spent, I assume.
Yes, there is.
Okay. And where do I see that plan?
So, Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides, this is actually a discussion we had over a year ago. We sat down, all of us, the trustees, and Danielle and myself, and we came up with a plan of where we wanted to allocate some of those resources. I have that information for the first meeting we had. And I can definitely send that back out to you. This is where we kind of drafted the original plan for some of this money and where we could use it, the different projects that we are planning to use it on. Off the top of my head, I know some of those projects are obtaining water rights, Edgewood Park, and another one that we did already use funds on for that was the clearing out of the old trailer park. That was part of Village Center. So there are some other projects that are included there that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can definitely get you that information sheet.
So is it safe to say that the unspent money is encumbered? Would that be a correct statement?
Yes, it is. And we have through, I believe it's June 2025 to expend all of this money. So we anticipate expending the rest of this money here probably within the next, by the end of next fiscal year. So in June of 2024, we should have everything covered, hopefully, so we don't even come close to that deadline and losing any money.
So we have, in our spreadsheets, we have a column for it called encumbered. So at some point, we might see that balance fill in that column for how it's encumbered and which categories it'll be encumbered in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all,
That's all.
Trustee Benavides?
Yeah, it is. What'd you call me?
Okay, Trustee Radnovich.
I just had a couple of things. I was really happy to see we're almost at $12 million in ending revenue. That's really awesome. Very good. I did have a question about the Small Cities Assistance Grant. Is that, and maybe this is a question for you, Maria, I don't know, that $336,000, almost $337,000, is that part of the 4th Street project?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich, no, the Small Cities Assistance Grant is a grant that we received from the state, and it is a one-time every year. Usually we see it between February and March of every year, and this is actually just an allocation that the state provides to small entities, and they have a calculation. It's based on population and a few other things, including how much money they have. And what they do is they give out this allocation just to help with the operations of these smaller entities. And so that particular amount fluctuates from year to year. In the 4 years that I've been here, I've seen something as low as 190,000 and something as high as about 400 and some change, 400,000. So that's something that we anticipate every year, and we just don't know the amount that will come in. But it is not part of 4th Street.
So it's for operational purposes. That's great.
That is correct.
Answered. The on page 81, under expenditures, the executive legislative line items, the budget is for sending everyone to the legislature and paying for our lobbyists. Is that right? Is that what that money is? That's set aside?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, what this line item is for, what you're seeing here, this is a total wrap up of that whole department. And so that department includes several items. It includes your travel and per diem for both for the mayor, the administrator, and trustees. It also includes salary for the mayor, administrator, and trustees. And then it also includes items like training and FICA, Medicare, para, the retirement. That's what's included there. This does not have anything to do with the lobbyist.
I see. Thanks, Tammy. And I think that might be it for me. Oh, I was wondering who, this is a really small amount. I was just curious. On page 84, there's a payable out to Delagi London. I was wondering who that was.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich. So Delage Landon is actually the company that it's the leasing company for our large Konica Minolta copier in Village Center. And so that is something you will see monthly. What this is it actually will, again, fluctuate depending on the our usage. But that right there, the $476, that's pretty close to what it is every month for the leasing of our copier.
I see. Thank you. I thought it was a person. Okay, that's everything I had.
Okay, is that all, Trustee Radnovich? Thank you. Okay, I think I got out of order a little bit. I need to call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to item B, 9B, discussion and approval of a resolution number 2023-03-01, a resolution recommending a budget adjustment bar for the Edible Trails Grant. CFO Silva.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, before you is the resolution 2023-03-01. And this resolution is required by the state for us to add to our budget. What we are adding here is a revenue line item and an expense line item for the Edible Trails Grant that we received. This grant was received in the last 6 days. So this grant was not originally budgeted for. This budget adjustment is to ensure we're in compliance with state statutes regarding our budget expenditures.
Thank you, CFO Silva. I need a motion to approve Resolution 2023-03-01.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution sorry, I lost it. 2023-03-01.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body? Hearing none, I'll call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
I just wanted to say, I think this is a really great grant. I hope we get more of them, and yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, item C, discussion and approval of resolution number 2023-03-02, a resolution recommending a budget adjustment request bar for state appropriations for the indoor classroom at the Larry P. Abraham Agri-Nature Center. CFO Silva.
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, before you is another budget resolution. Resolution 2023-03-02, and this here is doing the exact same thing as we just did. This is for Fund 312 to add both a revenue and an expense line item in the amount of $100,000 for the junior bill that was received in last year's appropriations. And we received this and it was not originally budgeted for. We're ready to go ahead and move on this, start spending on this. So this budget resolution is to ensure, again, that we are in compliance with state statutes regarding our budget expenditure.
Thank you, CFO Silva. I need a motion to approve Resolution 2023-03-02.
I'll make a motion
to approve Resolution 2023-03-02.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from the governing body? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 10, public hearings. Item 10A, discussion and approval to adopt ordinance number 293, granting a franchise to Comcast of New Mexico, LLC, to construct, maintain, and operate cable facilities and infrastructure in the public rights-of-way within the village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque, repealing ordinance number 66. Attorney Winter.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, this is the last of the franchise renewals. As you know, we've been through the Public Service New Mexico, Gas Company, I think the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority, and this is the last franchise. You'll notice that it has been cut in half. It is now only 55 pages instead of 130 pages. We did have a few issues with Comcast. We resolved those in the last few weeks. This is like most any other franchise. It governs the use of the right-of-way by Comcast. There's more to it, though, in this case. Comcast is, in our relationship with Comcast is federally regulated. So this is a 5% of gross revenue rent fee. It continues to be a 5% of gross revenue rent fee with some minor modifications to the definition of gross revenues, which will increase the rent to Comcast slightly. It is, however, the same definition that the city of Albuquerque uses for gross revenue, so we are on par with the city of Albuquerque. The reason the document is much reduced is we adopted the Federal Communications Commission's regulations as it applies to customer service standards, rather than drafting in all the customer service standards into the document. We just made reference to the Code of Federal Regulations. This is a not exclusive franchise. Anyone else that wants to provide cable service in the village can. This franchise is a little different than the P&M Water Authority and Gas Company franchise because it also has language on the type of programming that Comcast can provide. Part of the programming includes references to parental control devices. So there's a lot more detail in this one relative to what Comcast is putting on the channels, and you're right to have some input into that. So that's why it's a little bit longer. It does recognize your moratorium streets issue. That was something we agreed to right up front, and it does include language that Trustee Radnovich had wanted with respect to tree trimming. Comcast agreed to adopt the, I think it was an ANSI standard relative to tree trimming. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Winter. I need a motion to approve ordinance number 293.
A motion to approve ordinance number 293.
And I need a second, please.
I'll second that.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body?
I had one or two questions. On page 172, Nan, it says this shall take effect on February 1st, 2023. We've already signed the agreement. This is just for our review. On 2.3, it says, yeah, I'll let you get there.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee, that's something that has to be corrected. This was a holdover from the February agenda. But per New Mexico law, it is not effective until after Danielle advertises it one more time.
I see.
So that will control the effective date.
Okay, and that'll be changed in the end result.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's the only one I had. Oh, the 5%, I was going to ask if that's typical, and it sounds like it is.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee, yes, I believe every Comcast franchise in the state of New Mexico is at 5% at this point in time. They've all, I think even some of the counties have now moved into the 5% range. So it is typical across the country. It is a federal number.
I see.
The feds allow you to franchise fee up to 5% of Comcast gross revenue.
And I didn't remember that from last year. I think that was my last comment or question. Hold on one second. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco? Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going on to the next public hearing, 10B, TA 23-01, discussion and approval to advertise amended text section 9.2.12C1, retail commercial zones summarized as follows. In section B, uses, reduce multifamily dwelling unit density, add adult or child to daycare facilities use, increase ground floor retail percentage requirement for mixed-use development and reduce density, add mixed-use development with a commercial but non-retail component as a conditional use, reduce single-family detached townhouse and condominium density, add beverage to food and alcohol service use, change dry cleaning from permissive to conditional use, modify language for light manufacturing use. In Section E, height limitations, lower height from 3 stories, 39 feet, to 2 stories, 26 feet, allow covered patios or balconies on the second floor to exceed 60% of the first floor enclosed area, and to extend up to 5 feet beyond the first floor footprint if abutting 4th Street Northwest. Condense E1, 2, and 3 into E1, condense E3A and B into E1A, lower chimney height from 42 to 29 feet. Whew. Planning and Zoning Director Rubin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. The item before you is a request by the Village of Los Ranchos for text amendments to Section 9.2.12 C1 Retail Commercial Zone. For some background, in recent months, the village received applications or proposals for higher density residential housing located on or near the corner of 4th Street and Osuna Road. These applications were in addition to projects already in progress located in the Village Center Zone. The Board of Trustees debated the necessity to consider higher density residential housing in all of the C1 zone and subsequently approved a resolution imposing a moratorium on the acceptance of applications proposing higher density residential development in the C1 zone located in the village until March 31st, 2023. The Mayor, Board of Trustees, and Village Administration responded by creating a Citizens Advisory Committee to discuss and recommend changes to the C1 zone to address citizen concerns about higher density housing. The Citizens Advisory Committee held multiple meetings and has now finalized their recommendations, which are summarized and I will explain in detail and are in your report. On February 8th, 2023, the Board of Trustees approved an extension of the C1 moratorium until April 30th, 2023. This extension accommodates review and recommendation of the proposed amendments, text amendments by the Planning and Zoning Commission, a request to advertise the proposed text amendments at the Board of Trustees meeting tonight, and potential adoption of the amendments of a future board at a future Board of Trustees meeting. On February 14th, 2023, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval of TA 2301 to the Board of Trustees. In response to input received during the Planning Commission's discussion on the item, staff will be advertising future Citizen Advisory Committee meetings pertaining to proposed text amendments to Ordinance 284, Conservation Development Pilot Projects, and the VC Village Center Zone, so that members of the public can attend. So I'll go through these changes, these proposed text amendments in detail. Under multifamily, in Section B, uses, remove minimum dwelling unit requirement, which is currently 10, and reduce the maximum dwelling unit density from 20 units per acre to 16 per acre. The purpose of this is to address citizen concerns about residential density. Daycare facilities. The proposal is to add language that specifies adult or child. The purpose of this is to add some clarity. Mixed use. To increase the ground floor retail requirement from 10% to 50%, remove the minimum dwelling unit requirement, which is currently 10, reduce maximum dwelling unit density from no maximum to 16 per acre. The purpose of this is to drive more retail usage and address citizen concerns about residential density. In addition, additional inclusion of a mixed use as a conditional use where non-retail uses are proposed for the ground floor commercial use with the same density and commercial percentage requirement as the first permissive use. The purpose of this is to allow for non-retail commercial uses in mixed-use developments, but to provide a mechanism for conditions to be placed on various commercial uses that may have more intense effects, such as noise and odor. Single-family detached townhouse condominium. Remove the comma after family, add or before condominium. Remove minimum dwelling unit per acre requirement, which is currently 10. Reduce the maximum dwelling unit per acre to 16. It is currently 20. And the purpose of this is to improve grammatical clarity and address citizen concerns about residential density. Additional inclusion of the same residential uses as conditional when the development is more than 1 acre of land and when it is over 16 units, when over 16 dwelling units are proposed. The purpose of this is to provide a mechanism for conditions to be placed on site elements such as building massing to avoid the corridor effect of large developments or other areas of concern such as dumpster locations. Food and alcohol service, add the word beverage to the use title. The purpose of this is to more clearly identify that non-alcoholic beverage uses such as coffee shops are permissive in the C1 zone. Light manufacturing, to simplify the item to materials, food, or beverage. The purpose of this is to more clearly allow for various light manufacturing uses beyond those listed. In section E, height limitations, condense E1, E2, and E3 into one clause. Reduce building height to 26 feet. It is currently at 39 feet. The purpose of this is to reduce redundancy and to address citizen concerns about building height in the C1 zone. Condense E3A and E3B. Specify that the first section of the clause refers to single-family detached buildings. Add the language for all other development in the C1 zone, covered patios, porches, portals, balconies, and other open and accessible areas may exceed 60% of enclosed area, but must not extend beyond the footprint of the first floor. Where a non-single-family detached building abuts 4th Street, balconies may extend up to 5 feet beyond the first floor footprint, even if within the setback, if it is supported from the structure and not the ground. The purpose of this is to allow for community scale, COVID-19 appropriate commercial amenities such as outdoor seating on the 2nd floor. Section E5A, reduce chimney height to 29 feet. It is currently at 42 feet, and this is to be consistent with the proposed building height reduction. Stapled these backwards, sorry, thank you. And I believe that is the last one. So the department recommends approval of the advertisement of the text amendment, TA 2301 for ordinance number 294. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Director Rubin. I need a motion to approve the advertisement of the text amendment for ordinance number 294.
I'll make a motion to approve to advertise.
Thank you.
Is it the text or is it the TA 23-01? I'm a little confused as to which.
I believe.
TA 23-01?
Is that right?
Yes.
Danielle?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I need a second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion from the governing body? And is there any discussion? I'm sure there is.
I'm familiar with it, so I have no questions.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Benavides. Trustee Lewis, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. I believe this question will be for Maida. I'm just not quite understanding the wording under mixed use, parentheses, where not less than 50% ground floor area is commercial. I just want to make sure I understand that. Could you explain that to me a little bit?
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, yes, one moment. Under mixed use,
Page 224.
and we may be looking at different versions. Hang on one moment. I'll look in the packet.
I think it shows on 220 as well.
And that was for mixed use?
Top of page 220.
Thank you very much. Okay, could you repeat the question real quick?
Sure. It's less of a question and just more for my own education. I'm trying to, when somebody reads this, they're going to, where not less than 50% ground floor area is commercial, including non-retail. Could you explain that just for my own understanding, please?
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee. So the intent behind this is to make sure that we are encouraging retail in the mixed use, so that it is not a very small portion and overwhelmed by residential elements, for example. So there's a component of a retail requirement. Does that clarify?
Sort of, if we're not less than 50%. So it's a conditional use if it's over 50%.
Okay, I think I understand the question. So the proposal is to have this use listed twice, once as a permissive use for the retail use being the commercial use, and for the conditional use being any other type of commercial use that is not retail. And the purpose of this is that retail has typically very few external effects, such as noise or odor. For example, light manufacturing is a commercial use that we could entertain as part of this. But if we are entertaining other uses that are not potentially very simple, we want to make sure that we can condition them appropriately to avoid any external effects.
Okay, I think I understand the wording. I'm just struggling a little bit with where not less than, what exactly we mean by that. So, but I think I understand it. Thank you very much.
Any further questions, Trustee Lewis?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Radnovich.
Yeah, I have, well, it's a similar question, Maida. So we're requiring 50% retail use on the first floor of any mixed-use project within the C1 zone, right?
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, that is correct. Currently, the requirement for a retail use in the mixed-use development is 10%, and the committee is recommending that it be increased to 50%.
So, you know, part of it has to do with marketability and how much the developer, whether it be a small developer or a large one, thinks they can offer. What would, so it could end up that, and I'm just asking the question and kind of discussing it a bit, and I'd love to hear what Trustee Lewis has to say about it. But if the developer produces 50% retail space on the bottom floor in a mixed-use development, and he can't or she can't actually lease it, it becomes dead space, right? It becomes unleased retail space. And so if we're requiring that for every mixed-use development, and there could be a substantial number, I'd hate to see us require something that may not be able to be filled based on the market and what a developer can actually sell to those who might want to open shops and coffee shops and so forth. So it strikes me that there maybe should be a way that there could be less retail use if there is some process that we can see as a governing body and as a village that would allow less. I'm not trying to reduce the amount of retail space, but I'm struggling with some of the other developments that are much higher stories, but on 4th Street even, that have plenty of retail and micro retail space that is unleased right down the road. So it worries me a little bit. I understand why we're doing it, and it makes some sense, but it worries me a little bit that we could be creating a bad condition on the street. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Radnovich. So the intent behind this is to encourage retail. However, that's a very valid concern, and if the board deems that to be an inappropriate percentage of a requirement, that's something that the board can vote on as well. But also,
can the CAC still? I'm sorry to interrupt. Can the CAC still look at that?
The Citizens Advisory Committee has wrapped up their recommendations on it, so that's why it's at this stage now before you. But if that's something you would like staff to look into a little bit more in the interim before it comes back to you again, because this is advertisement, that's something we can do a little bit. It's, we will be, yeah, we can look into it a little bit. Also, I want to offer that there is the variance process for applicants who feel that this is inappropriate and wish to do something differently.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think it's worth looking into. And if Trustee Lewis, if you and Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Benavides, if you have other thoughts on that, I was just a little bit worried about that when I read it.
Sure, I'll weigh in on that. It troubles me too. It's probably the one thing, the outstanding work that the CAC and Planning and Zoning has done. I think this is excellent. It's the one thing that troubles me. I don't know that, changing the percentage makes any difference as much as, I've seen plenty of developments, even the city of Albuquerque, where when people were putting in some parking structures, they required them to have retail on the ground floor, and most of those spaces are still empty today. I don't think we want that on 4th Street, but I guess it would have to be taken through the variance process. But I sort of feel the same way you do, Trustee.
I want to see as much retail as the next person out there, because it helps the village and provides services to residents, but I don't want to see empty storefronts too. So there should be some kind of way out of that from a coding perspective or a planning perspective.
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, yes, so the way out is on a case-by-case basis. It's the variance process. However, again, if the standard seems too high, we could, the board could vote to stick with the existing 10% or alter it completely. So up to the board.
And maybe the developer can provide some proof or a study, some way of kind of giving us more meat, giving us more to be able to, as a village, to approve or not approve.
As a point of clarification, in the variance process? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Did you have something more?
I'm not done,
Okay,
but,
go ahead, you finish.
but we can, if that's one, if you want to talk about that, we can talk.
Yeah, maybe this would be a good time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, this has gone through a long process, and we're on a timeline.
Yep.
And it was approved by the P&Z. I hate to change the number now, and if there is a method of getting out of a bad situation through the variance process, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it just struck me as a potential
We have an expiring moratorium.
Right.
And could we, I mean, using what has been written, if it isn't working, we can always adjust it, right?
Mayor Pro Tem, that is correct.
So I think if we find that even the variance process seems to be, there seems to be stumbling with that, then I think we, as a governing board, can come back and ask that be changed.
For sure, but we aren't necessarily having to vote on this tonight.
This is just for advertisement.
Yes. So between now and next month, maybe there's a little more research we could do on that particular piece. Just because I worry about that.
Let me ask, if there are small edits, do we need, maybe this is a question for our attorney, if there are small edits, do we have to send it back to the P&Z for approval? At what point do we have to do that?
So Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides, no, the board could propose edits and adopt with those edits.
Okay, good.
Okay, any further questions?
A few.
Okay.
This is a clarification more than anything, Maida. On 1.2 overall village goals, it probably needs to say about midway through that sentence, open space vistas and the tree canopy, as opposed to just the canopy, or does that mean a canopy as in an overhang kind of canopy on a building?
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, this is under the master plan section 1.2.
Point 1. 1.2.1, yeah.
I don't see canopy in that section, I'm sorry. Hang on.
It's on page 2021, and it's about halfway down, Village Master Plan 1.2, overall village goals. And then 1.2.1 is the sentence. And
I'm reading 1.2.1, reflect and preserve a semi-rural village identity and character with agriculture, village history, and the natural environment, open space, vistas. Okay, correct. This should be a quote taken directly from the master plan. I believe that's correct.
Got it. Okay. Another point I just wanted to make is under objectives, a little further down on that same page. It seems to me that, we've tossed this around a lot, especially with, all the kind of kerfuffles in last year's meetings. But it seems to me we need to define what village character is. People say rural, people say semi-rural. We use the term village character. I know this is from the master plan, but it is a master plan. And so I think in some way we need to define who we are, what that character actually is. And I don't know if that could be in the definitions of the code or where that would likely be, but it's kind of an ambiguous term, village character. And so I think we need to figure out what that is as a village and define it, and perhaps define it in this rewrite. And since we have another month to consider this, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Radnovich, I would offer that may be outside of the scope of these edits. And I will take note of it and start discussing it with staff.
Okay. Words like sense of community and village character really need to be defined, I think. And I think the public came out to us to try to define that in a way, but we really need to do that in order to make this stick.
And I would also offer that these proposed text amendments are in response to community input. So while that definition definitely means something else to every single person, something very individual, and could warrant further definition, this is definitely in response to a general outpouring of input from the villagers.
Yep. On the next page, 2022, at the very top, it says sets a high standard, and this obviously is coming from the master plan as well, but I just wanted to mention it because it could be part of how we change that particular C1 zone code. It says sets a high standard of architecture design. I think it should say architecture and site design, and somehow marry the two, because I think both relate to who we are and what we look like in the end as a village. And I have a few under the tables that are the actual retail commercial zone, 9.2.12 C1, that I just wanted to ask about. Under cannabis, and this probably, and Nan, this probably relates to our code about what is allowable in terms of cannabis, but I think part of what would make 4th Street more successful is having more places open a little bit later than 8 o'clock. And so one of the things I was questioning is, I don't see a line there, but on page 223, retailer accepting that sale between 8 p.m. to 9 a.m. is prohibited. Can we, at this point, changing that would take changing our cannabis code? It's permitted, it says, but can we extend that timing?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustee, you don't really have a cannabis code per se. It was an ordinance that then got dropped into the
Sorry, I
zone
used the
code.
wrong term. Yeah.
Right. So why there's no underlining or anything there is because this is your law currently. So what's black is your law currently.
Yep.
So it is your prerogative to propose amendments to there if you see fit.
Okay. So I'm just proposing that maybe they can be open until 9 just to increase usership and a little more liveliness on 4th Street.
May I get clarification?
Well, this is just cannabis, but I have other places
It's
that I wanted to.
cannabis specifically right now that you're referring to, the retail extending till 9 p.m.
Would that have to be changed in the ordinance? We would have to, I mean, we can't just like change it, right? We'd have to change the ordinance?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustee, I think you can make these this particular change to your advertisement if you vote on it, and there's a majority of you in favor of that change. It sounds like trustee Radnovich might be adding more liveliness to the 9 p.m. issue later on.
I will.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that places that are used well, that are main streets, stay open a little later. You know, in big cities, you want places to be open later than that even. I'm not suggesting that we do that, but there's another part of this under alcohol that allows, alcohol sales, next page, 2024, alcohol sales are allowed here up until 2 a.m. in the morning. And do we want that?
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich, I suspect that may be related to selling in grocery stores. I may not be correct, but
wow.
alcohol can be sold, or no, as bars, I suppose. Never mind.
And I'm not sure we have a bar in Los Ranchos that's open that late anyway, but.
Mayor and trustee, it is qualified, so conditional use would be the sale between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., and then prohibited 2 a.m. to 8 a.m.
So I have a few others. Do you want me to go through them tonight, or would you like me to send them to you? That wouldn't allow us to discuss them, so.
I think we need to discuss them.
Great, okay. So another one that, and this goes back to the cannabis one, I think the state law allows, and again, I'm trying to increase the use of our 4th Street, at least suggest, I should say. I believe our code or our ordinance states that cannabis consumption area is not allowed. And I was wondering about revisiting that because it also might increase the liveliness and use.
Isn't
of
that
the
state
area.
law?
No, that's prerogative. That was our prerogative.
Yeah, that's a prerogative of the
we
local
chose not to.
communities. We chose not to do.
Yeah,
I knew that was going to go. People were going to go.
my opinion is that the majority of the citizens would not like it.
If I can weigh in here for a second.
Sure.
Go ahead.
When cannabis was going to be legalized, the trustees were faced with that you cannot ban it from being sold in the village. That is considered discrimination against cannabis, and you can't discriminate against broccoli or Brussels sprouts. It was a very interesting experience for us to go through.
It was.
So at the time when we decided to adopt some type of ordinance regarding cannabis, we felt like the village residents did not want cannabis shops up and down 4th Street. And so we could not discriminate against them. We could not block them from happening, but we could make it less desirable. And by that, we said you can't have consumption areas. We said you had to close by 8 o'clock. And really what our intent was to try to make them move and open their business somewhere else other than the village of Los Ranchos' 4th Street. And so that's what's behind it. It certainly can be revisited, but that was where a lot of this came from.
Yes, and I remember that, trustee. I'm just bringing it up as a potential way to increase the usability of the space. Again, back to the alcohol sales, it seems like 2 a.m. is very late for the village of Los Ranchos to be selling alcohol at bars. I don't know that we'd want that kind of an establishment here, so I bring that up too.
And Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Radnovich, again, that's a conditional use between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., so that would get reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission, case by case.
Mm-hmm. Could we, though, reduce it to 12 a.m.? Just asking. These are just questions that have come up with me. I question the services section on page 224, allowing rental centers. I know rental centers are used by, they're a more affordable way to have furniture and refrigerators and all that stuff, but they can be a pretty messy kind of a use too. So I question that one if we really want rental centers on 4th Street.
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, that's definitely something that can be altered through this process. I just want to offer that it is a conditional use at this time, which would get reviewed case by case and approved by the Planning Commission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just a few more. I was wondering under the light manufacturing, why we, and I know it's a permissive use, but, oh, yes, we crossed out jewelry, pottery, ceramics, glass, and metal art. We already have metal art on the street. We already have ceramics art on the street, and we probably have jewelry, although I'm not absolutely positive about that. But why are we crossing those out?
Sure. Mayor and Trustee Radnovich, Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Radnovich. So the reason behind this is because when staff sees a list of very, very, very specific uses, we are prompted to say, why only those? That's very specific. We should be careful to not allow other things, right? And so the committee was discussing various light manufacturing uses, and there are many that we feel are appropriate in a commercial zone along 4th Street. And so it actually provides a lot of clarity and for staff to say that generally materials, so jewelry, pottery, ceramics, glass, metal art, all of that is included still. That's permissive. But to allow also for light food manufacturing or beverage, we wanted to make it a broad category that encompassed those. So they're not going away.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Is this also, this rewrite also, and by the way, I have no disagreement at all with the density levels. It's small stuff like this that I'm asking about. So allowing, this allows for commercial car washes, it allows for drive-up facilities, and it allows for self-storage units, correct?
So Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, I want to make sure that when we say allow, we're being very specific about what that is. So I believe auto sales right now, conditional use, sales of auto parts and supplies, including service stations, is permissive. Farm equipment sales and services is permissive. Commercial car washes is permissive at this point in time, but the other uses listed are conditional.
So potentially, if someone came and had a desire to put a commercial car wash right on 4th Street in either the area that we're talking about redesigning or the area that's already been redesigned and built, they could.
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, yes, at this time, yes.
And I question whether we would want that there as a use. The same with self-storage units and the same with drive-up facilities, because we're trying to encourage pedestrianism and a more friendly environment on 4th Street, not those kinds of uses. And I'm not trying to be, I guess, retail bigoted, but I just question those as potential uses because they might fly in the face, my opinion, they fly in the face of what we're trying to do on 4th Street, which is make it a higher quality environment with retail uses that talk to who the village is, not car washes.
Yeah.
And car washes are generally not very water conservative either, so just saying. And I'm trying to stimulate conversation here. I'm not.
No, I think you have a good point about car washes.
And this goes back to my architectural training. I'm sorry. Mansard roofs are really ugly roofs. And on page 226, maybe we want to think about whether we want mansard roofs or not, because they're just not very aesthetically pleasing.
Which one, where are you looking?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's on page 226, It's under section, sorry. It's under that same section with the matrices. So it's the use table, and it's on page 226, right?
E1, I believe.
Yes, E1, correct.
Mayor Pro Tem, trustee, if I may, I believe the point of this sentence that's in, I believe, every zone is to define how we would measure height. At this time, I don't believe that we do not allow certain roof types. So that would be a new introduction and may need to be revisited elsewhere in other zones if that is the preference.
Yes, I realize that's what that is. I just wanted to bring that up as a... I noticed on the bottom of page 226, as a matter of fact, the very last line, it says see illustration for facades and the height of facades. Are we planning to have an illustration there? I don't remember there being one, but there might be.
Mayor Pro Tem and trustee, that is language that's existing. We have not added anything or anything like that. If there is a reference to an illustration that doesn't exist, I'd have to verify. But, you know, if that is an old thing that can go away, I can look into that.
So maybe we get rid of that if we need to. I'm guessing, and then on the next page on 227, I apologize for all of this, but I did look at this very closely.
That's good.
On page 227, C, at the very top, or almost the very top, I assume that radio towers and flagpoles, I know flagpoles don't have to be 40 feet high. Do radio towers have to be 40 feet high? That's pretty high. And so I'm just questioning whether we want radio towers in that C1 zone 40 feet high. And the same with flags, potentially. I believe in America, and the American flag is awesome, but 40 feet seemed like pretty high to me. So, and I've personally used flagpoles in our projects that aren't 40 feet high. So bring that up as a question again. So that's C. And also the one before it, flagpoles, B on that page. Trustee Lewis, I hope if you have anything to say, please butt in and let's see.
I think you have some very good comments, George, and I think there are things that need to be considered.
Okay. Another one that we've actually used in the past that I wanted to question is under design regulations on page 227. And this is number 2. And again, another pet peeve of mine is when we force architects to put in, instead of real windows, we force them to put in glazing that is not really a window. We did that on the AutoZone, I think. And so I'd rather see architectural articulation than faux windows on the street. And so I question us including that as part of our design regulations because they're just not very, they look like what they are. They're a fake window. So that's another one I didn't like. I'd rather see a articulation of the architecture or some kind of detail as opposed to a fake window. Just saying.
I agree.
Oh, and then, again, I apologize, I'm taking so long. 228, under outdoor space regulations, I didn't see sandwich boards specifically mentioned in there, and maybe I'm just missing it. But wouldn't that be the place where we allow or don't allow sandwich boards for retail spaces? I know people are using them.
Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee, is that under N, outdoor display of merchandise that you're referring to?
Yes.
So this may be, I believe this is looking at the merchandise rather than the signage, and we do have a sign section of code, so that may be where that resides.
Okay.
And it does include sandwich boards.
Okay, great. And I think that's all of it that I had.
Thank you.
And
Trustee Radnovich.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may offer one last comment, unless there are other questions. The purview of this exercise has been to focus pretty specifically on higher density residential uses in this zone. So a lot of the other stuff, there were a few things we saw as potential cleanup. And one way to go with this is while we're here, clean as much up as we can. On the other hand, if there are extensive edits that the board would like to see, I might recommend that we focus on just the residential proposed amendments and do a different process, not in a moratorium for some of the design standards and things like that, just offering that as an option.
I think that's a great option to move forward with.
We're here, so, you know, it's there. So why not fix it? It's not that much. I mean, it's some edits, but it's not, and the controversial ones like the outdoor cannabis consumption, you know, that we can move aside.
With sandwich boards.
With sandwich boards, that we can move aside. But some of these are pretty straightforward, and I mean, why wait? We're here.
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I disagree. I agree with Maida in that I think what might seem straightforward to one of us or two of us isn't necessarily straightforward to people in the village. And I think we owe it to them to make sure that we've sat down and move forward with this issue and then come back and address specific cleanup in another issue where we're getting public input and comments on what we're going to address versus just sort of making changes tonight.
Yeah, to follow up on that, Trustee Lewis, I mean, we had a Citizens Advisory Committee, we still have it, and the scope, we had a scope, and we were careful about scope creep because we just barely got things done in time to, I think we were wanting to get all this done by April before the moratorium expires. And so some of the things you mentioned, I agree with, and maybe if there are any errors, those should probably be fixed. If there's simple things, I'll let maybe Maida make that call. And, but there are other things that we might want to run through the Citizens Advisory Committee before we actually make a change.
Agreed.
Otherwise, we might get ourselves in trouble.
Okay, so how do we move forward from here?
Mayor Pro Tem, trustees, I was going to make a suggestion. You could certainly bifurcate this and proceed along Maida's recommendation and approve advertisement of what's in front of you today. You could then remand this back to P&Z or back to the Citizens Advisory Group to consider each of the issues raised by Trustee Radnovich. So in other words, reconstitute that process, invoke that public comment that comes with the Citizens Advisory Group, and then more public comment at P&Z, and then reconsider a second set of edits after. Otherwise, the alternative is defer the whole thing this evening and remand it back to P&Z. And I think that might be disrespectful of the work that's gone into what's happened thus far. That's not legal advice, the disrespectful part. But I just wanted to let you know that those were sort of the two options. I think defer this and remand it back to P&Z, or proceed tonight with Maida's suggestion, but direct that further review be conducted by P&Z or the Citizen Advisory Group.
I think we, and thank you for that explanation, Nan, and I agree with some of what you're saying, but I think I'd still like to see one more go-round cleaning up things like that illustration and some of the less controversial things that I might have brought up, like car washes and so forth. And we're still meeting that deadline if some of that cleanup occurs in the next month, right?
No.
We're not?
Would we have to re-advertise?
We'd have to re-advertise at that point.
So in order to make change to this, at least considering some of what I said, we'd have to make that change tonight in our motion, yes? Or we could remand it to Maida to make some of those changes.
Can we have conditions? I don't know.
You know, my feeling is I made a motion to approve to advertise TA 23-01. And I think that's the motion on the table. I think
That's true.
Trustee Radnovich brings up a lot of good points. I think there's a lot of things throughout our zoning code that probably needs cleaned up. But I'm very much against doing a little bit of that. This is what's before us. They had the scope. They addressed that scope, and I think we respect that scope, and then go back to another round of cleaning it up in the future.
Yes, because if it became too much of a problem and sending things back to the Citizens Advisory Committee, that there's a domino effect, because now we're working on the pilot project conservation program, and then we're going to do VC. So all those other things will get delayed.
That makes sense.
And you do bring up good points. I just don't know. I just feel like we just need to finish this.
It's the first time I saw it, so I feel like this happens often, and it shouldn't.
But you do make good points. I agree.
So will we clean up things like an illustration that doesn't exist?
If there's errors, we should fix it.
I can check that illustration right now. I mean, it's got a citation to it, so I'll take a look. I think it does exist, but it's referencing a different ordinance.
And I'd like to offer that it should be something that we get on soon, because some of these uses could come in and hit us sooner than we think. Thanks.
Okay, so my understanding is there is a motion on the table and a second. So I'm going to go ahead and call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco. Yes. Okay, the motion carries unanimously, and we are going to move on. Let's see where I am here.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do have a question now that it's passed. I thought that we were looking at this and reviewing it, and we did have another month. So the reason we don't is because if we don't approve this we did approve it, but if we hadn't approved it by this meeting, then it wouldn't be approved by the April deadline. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item 11, unfinished business. Discussion, consideration, and approval of the governing body regular meeting day and time for calendar year 2023. This was deferred from February 2023. This item of business was heard in December, deferred to February, and subsequently deferred again to this month. It appears that changing the meeting day from the second Wednesday to the third Wednesday is not something that the trustees want to do based on scheduling. Trustee Radnovich, you mentioned last month that you had some ideas for getting the packet out with more time to review prior to the meeting. Would you like to share them for consideration?
So I do not have a proposed calendar for tonight. Instead, I just want to discuss the issues that I think we need to overcome. It's become apparent to me that the reason that we're given 3 business days to review these caseloads are really the systemic nature of the way that the village has organized its government and the interplay of end-of-month financials with our deadline for submittals. And so I think we need to look at that, and I think there are ways that we can modify those deadlines, and I'd like to return with some in the future. The only way to get this done differently, given the current village mores and the separate financial reviews that are so important towards the end of the month versus what other municipalities have done, I think, is to separate the two. And so that way we could approve in some way the financials without having to have such little time to review things that are important, like, for instance, projects that are upon us. So I know there's resistance even from this political body, and I'm not interested in arguing the point tonight, but I would like to come back and work with our administration and review what other municipalities have done a little bit more in the future and revisit this point, this unfinished business at some time in the coming quarter.
I think that's fair enough, Trustee Radnovich. I would assume that we are at this point, we're already entering the 4th month in the year. I think that maybe next go around, you'll be able to sit down with staff and maybe punch some things out.
Next go around meaning 2024?
2024.
I want to come back before then.
Okay, well, I think at this point, we need to, I need a motion to leave the regular Board of Trustees meeting on the 2nd Wednesday of the month, just so we can move on and maybe close this out for now and maybe get back to discussion in the future.
It's not the board meeting time that I'm contesting, it's the submittal time for turning in documents that we might consider that aren't financial. Right.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Radnovich, that is true. When we brought this initially in February, we had proposed changing the meeting date to the 3rd Wednesday to try to accommodate and bridge that gap. We've since deferred it a couple of times, and then we've discussed how to get that packet out. But tonight, I think we should probably move forward in just making a motion that we're not moving the meeting because we've proposed that calendar change, and everyone seems to agree that it just isn't feasible for their current schedules. But definitely meet with staff. We can bring this back in with some proposals to the board with some of the ideas that you have under a different item, new business.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I need a motion to leave the regular Board of Trustees meeting on the 2nd Wednesday of the month.
I'll make a motion to leave the existing Board of Trustees meeting on the 2nd Wednesday of every month.
Okay, need a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from the governing body? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yeah.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, our next item is 12, new business. Discussion and approval of Resolution 2023-03-03, a resolution regarding a capital appropriations project agreement with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Ms. Rinaldi.
Madam Pro Tem and trustees, you have the resolution that I spoke about earlier in my project report in the amount of $400,000, authorizing Mayor Donald T. Lopez to sign the cooperative agreement through the New Mexico Department of Transportation to accept these funds for the expenditure to plan, design, and construct Phase 2 of the 4th Street Revitalization Project. The appropriation reversion date is June 30th, 2026. And it identifies the appropriation number and the NMDOT control number. And it indicates that the improvements may include traffic lane reduction and pedestrian, drainage, lighting, landscaping improvements in the village of Los Ranchos.
Thank you, Ms. Rinaldi. I need a motion to approve Resolution 2023-03-03.
Motion to approve Resolution 2023-03-03.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from the governing body? Okay.
I do have a little bit. And I know this boat has left the dock, but I just need to say that I think the way we're going about the 4th Street design is not the way that I think we should. That said, I'm going to vote on this tonight.
Okay.
Madam Pro Tem, may I comment?
Sure.
This is a legislative appropriation. It's a request by the Village of Los Ranchos to fund this project. Any funds that are for roadway improvements are directed through NMDOT. And I would also like to remind everyone that Phase 1 was an NMDOT funded project.
Thank you.
However, $250,000 of it was DOT funded, not the rest.
That number, Madam Pro Tem, that is not correct, and that's not a correct number of appropriations amounted for Phase 1. But the reality is that 1 penny of state funds makes it a state-funded project, regardless of the amount.
But to Trustee Radnovich's point, didn't the village contribute a large portion for Phase 1?
Madam Pro Tem Trustee, the village funded greater than 89% of the project.
Yeah.
That is correct. At great expense to the village and a great reduction to all other services in the village, including staffing.
Thank you, Ms. Rinaldi. Okay, I'm going to now call up individuals who signed up prior to the meeting to speak, and we have one person signed up, David Montoya. Would you approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, please? And you have 2 minutes.
David Montoya, 517 Pueblo. One thing is, we had been told for over a year that we were going to have public involvement in this 4th Street design at the 30%. And this is what constantly happens here. And we got to change this because you end up bringing everything, just same thing that Trustee Radnovich is complaining about. Everything comes through and it's already done. And then they say, well, we had public involvement. Well, it's BS. We still haven't had that 30% deal we were promised last year. And I think we have some things to say. And I think they will be helpful. And I think most of us that I know of support all of this. But we do want the involvement. And it's wrong not to do that. So I'm again asking that we have some public involvement in this design. And seconding about this bike path, we were also promised way back that we were going to have bike traffic on 4th Street. And if you put all the bikes on the sidewalks, it's really going to be a problem. We can work this out, but it takes some thinking, and ending Bernalillo County's work at Paseo is not a great solution. That is, I bicycle, my grandkids bicycle, we use 4th Street, and we can find a way to do this, and we're gonna give away possibility of funds that are gonna come in the future from the feds and the city and the state that will help us in this endeavor to bring, not everybody's gotta be in a car all the time. And I just, I want to again say, please get us involved. Make these committees to help you guys get in there. And then I think that when these committees are put together, that there's got to be.
Can you please finish your thought? Your time has expired.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe those committees could have interim reports so that some of these things can be reviewed as they're going. And that would really be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Maria, can you address some of those?
Several points of clarification. The 30% alternative was selected in public process. That was a noticed meeting. That was a well-attended meeting. The public themselves selected the design alternative. Phase 1 does not include bike paths, bike lanes, bike paths, or even charts. That's the way it was designed. The consecutive phase that was selected by the public eliminated the bike lanes. In the 30% design, that's done. That has been through public process. We will be doing a public information meeting in April to revisit how we got to remind people how we got to 30% design alternative selected, and to discuss what it is that we are doing to coordinate with Bernalillo County to incorporate their design into ours, so that there is a logical transition of their bike lane into our project. There will be multi-use trails that accommodate multimodal in those areas of transition so that bicycles are safe from a travel lane. That's an absolute thing. There is nothing that requires us to have a formalized bike lane for any source of funding that we are seeking for 4th Street. There are bike trail monies that are specific to those facilities, but not as part of a roadway design. And the reality is that 4th Street is a road. We are creating multimodal uses of it where none exist now. And those discussions will occur in 100% design, and the public will be involved at significant benchmarks through that process.
Thank you for the clarification, Maria. Appreciate it.
Can I ask Maria a question?
Sure.
So is it correct to say that those people that were involved in the 30% design were not against bike trails? It was just a trade-off, and nobody could figure out how to incorporate the bike trails.
Madam Pro Tem Trustee, there were a number of alternatives proposed. One included specifically a bike lane. That was not selected. That was one of the alternatives. That was not the choice by the public.
But it was a trade-off, right?
So the issue is you have a 60-foot approximately right-of-way, and you have to decide what you're going to accommodate. How many lanes of traffic? How wide of sidewalks? Are you going to have on-street parking? All those elements were discussed, evaluated, reviewed, and alternatives with every one of those elements was included in the selection process. This is the 3-lane with a pedestrian facility on both sides.
Yes.
Was the one selected. That's not to say that's going to be the design throughout. One of the value engineering recommendations is that you take the phases individually, and based on existing conditions and the environment and the what are the current land uses, what's the according to the master plan, and what are the development trends affecting those different phases, they may have very different, within that configuration, for example, there may not be a continuous center turn lane in all areas of those phases, so that we can accommodate a trail that has bicycle-specific multi-use facility. I'm sorry, I'm a little low on my blood sugar here. I really apologize. I think I'm gonna pass out, actually.
Sit down,
Sit
Maria.
down, please, yeah.
Sit down.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Do you need anything?
Do you need anything, Maria?
So what we will involve the public in the process is, in each of the phases, does it make sense here to have a center turn lane the entire length of this phase? Or do we trade off that for wider sidewalks or a multi-use facility that accommodates a single travel lane for bikes? But that may be only on one side and not both sides. So all that flexibility, thank you so much, we have as we move forward. The next phase, because of the concentration of development, the number of businesses, that 3-lane configuration with the pedestrian bicycle facility on both sides, not dedicated to bikes, but multimodal, that's pretty much set, because we're almost ready to go on that phase. But all of this will be discussed. Thank you. Thank you. These will all be discussed in public hearing. I mean, there will be no attempt to push through a design that the public does not participate in the final development of. I assure you that. I assure you of that.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate the comments. All right, so the floor is now closed for public comment. I'm going to go ahead and call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis?
Yes.
Trustee Benavides?
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. The motion carries. Okay, moving on to item B, discussion and approval in accordance with the Village of Los Ranchos 2013 Codified Ordinances, Chapter 9, Section 9.2.2, Planning and Zoning Commission. A, membership. The commission shall consist of 7 members who shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the members of the governing body. The Planning and Zoning Commissioners for the years 2023 and 2024 are A, Connie Barrow, Karen Christensen, Dan Gay, Mary Homan, J.T. Michelson, and Shalene Smith. Planning and Zoning Director Rubin.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is the annual appointment of commissioners, and I just want to point out that these are all reappointments. These are existing current commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission for 2023-2024.
I make a motion to approve the plan 2023-2024.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion from the governing body? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for the question and call for the roll call vote. Trustee Lewis.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Pacheco, yes. Motion carries. Okay, now we'll move to item 13, trustee informal discussion. Trustee Lewis.
I only have one thing. It's an item that's out there that this is sort of directed to the CAC or made one of the things that seems to be living out there is still learned about our regulation to notify for 300 feet. People say it needs to notify the whole big issue that be addressed. I personally like the idea of notifying anybody within all registered home associations village to disseminate to their members. So
Trustee Lewis, if I,
zoning address or the CAC.
Trustee Lewis, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your internet connection is horrible, and we're just getting little bits and pieces of your comment. But I think you're commenting on the notification of the 300 feet. And that.
Correct.
I think you're saying that there are concerns and issues, and it's something that we may need to look at. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You might turn off your camera, Trustee Lewis. That usually helps with bandwidth.
You want to try speaking again?
That's all I had, so.
Okay, sorry about that, Trustee Lewis. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Benavides.
Yes, about public comments and sign up. It's hard to know how many people are going to come, right? And today would have been one of those days where we might have allowed public comment even if they hadn't signed up. I don't know how to do that, because I think we have to advertise public comments, right? I mean, the people have to sign up for public comments.
Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides. Yes, we advertise in our announcement in the paper notifying about the regular meeting, and we ask that individuals sign up prior to noon the day of the meeting. We also are asking and giving and allowing one last chance to sign up prior to the meeting at 7 o'clock. We did, and we used to allow folks who didn't sign up speak. However, it started to become very chaotic to try to maintain when people were yelling and saying, I wanted to speak or I didn't sign up. So we're trying to kind of organize it a little bit better for us to be able to coordinate our meetings. We're not trying to suppress any general public comment. We're just trying to organize it a little bit better to make some sense into how to provide a well-organized meeting. People will see the agenda on Friday prior. They have an opportunity to take a look at the packet. That should allow them 6 days to decide whether they wish to comment or not, and then they can always sign up prior to the meeting.
And the other thought I had about public comment is typically we do not have public comment during the time for our department reports. And there's always some confusion behind that. So perhaps in our agenda, we might just put on there public comment is not permitted, or so there's
yes, indeed, it does say that right now, Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Benavides. It does state on our agenda that public comment is for items not on the agenda. And the reason for that is because public comment is to allow individuals to speak about items that are outside of what we're talking about, because in certain items of business, we do allow public to speak on them.
Well, you say items not on the agenda, however, the department reports are on the agenda, right? So,
yes, items not on the agenda.
yeah, but if for things that are on the agenda, that we can have public comment for those things as well, right?
On specific items of business, yes.
But not for department reports.
Correct. That's
and maybe that needs to be made clear. That was my point.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah. Maybe that does need to be clearer on the public participation sheet that is provided in the packet, and I can make that change, absolutely.
Because that happens quite a bit. I'm just thinking it's probably.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Trustee Benavides, thank you so much for those comments and ideas.
So let's see, we had a presentation from the principal of Los Ranchos Elementary, and the question was asked about report frequency. I don't know if he's expecting for somebody to get back with them, but maybe like a fall report and a spring report would be sufficient.
Yeah, like quarterly maybe would be.
Or quarterly, whatever, well, I mean, you know, we do typically have a packed agenda, so I don't want to overpack it, but maybe a fall and a spring would be good.
Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Benavides, I'll be happy to pass on those comments from Principal Robinson and his suggestions to provide to the board and see what frequency he would like, and then we can add that to the agenda, you know, perhaps quarterly or semi-annually, whatever you prefer.
And we had a presentation about the Business and Economic Development Committee, and many recommendations were presented, and there was a lot of good ideas in his report. I'm wondering how we, as a Board of Trustees, get together and take action on that. I know we're going to be talking about capital money, but I don't know if that's the place to do it. I'd be willing to do a special session at some point to talk about just those recommendations. So
I think that's a great idea, Trustee Benavides. I would support that.
Because there, you know, a lot of effort went into that, and I hate to just drop that ball. One final comment. There was, I think, in Ann Simon's report, she talked about the Lavender Festival, which is coming up, and so I think there's a committee that organizes this Lavender Festival, I believe, right? And I'm wondering about how much the village gets in terms of funds from that, either through gross receipts tax or a charge for that, because I think we ought to at least recover our costs for all the maintenance that, I mean, for example, we had it at Hartnett Park, and, you know, the grass gets trampled on, a lot of cleanup. And I think I asked Ann Simon how much we charged, and I think it was like $300 or something like that. I'm sure that doesn't cover the cost to get that park back in shape. So.
Can I say something real quick?
I don't know, it's up to the Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to clarify something on that.
Yeah.
For the barn and Hannon Park,
Yeah.
it's $300 if you are a resident. It's sky high.
No, yeah, so I don't know if that's, I don't think that was a barn charge. I think maybe somebody else knows what that charge is, but I could be wrong. But I was surprised it was such a small amount. And I know we have a lot of vendors there, and maybe we received gross receipts tax from those vendors.
That I don't know. I think those are all Ann questions.
Yeah.
And I think it would be good to just kind of review where we are with that. My understanding is that the Lavender Festival is being passed off to the community farms now in terms of oversight. I think that's happening this year, and this is just my thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's changing anything in terms of the fees. And then there's a promoter, obviously, that works with, you know, the organization. So it may be time to just kind of look at things again and, you know, see where we're at and see if we need to make some changes.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Radnovich.
The reason I asked Josh tonight about the foundations in the Paseo del Norte open space was because that's a remnant of our history in Los Ranchos. And we so often, and this is true for the entire Albuquerque metro area, and I think in some parts of New Mexico, we often don't pay homage or pay respect to our history. And so I've been thinking about that, and I realized that that was just a, 6 inches below grade, a concrete foundation for a building. But I think we need to think about our history more and who we are as a village in return, as part of that. And so one of the things I wanted to bring up is the potential that we buy the old Yanomoto sign or somehow get the old Yanomoto sign that's over at the school at Second and El Pueblo, and that we post that near that open space that we're reconditioning. Because I think that's a at least a small step towards keeping some of that agricultural heritage that is the village of Los Ranchos. Before they were a nursery, they were actually a farm, and they grew vegetables and they sold them, and so wholesale and at their farm store. So there could be ways, before we start tearing down things, even like that foundation, there could be ways to use them in ways that we could promote that heritage. And so it's also why I mentioned when I mentioned to Josh that we should do some kind of master plan for the Paseo del Norte open spaces, because even though it seems like nothing, that foundation could have been something for some other use, maybe even to post that sign within that open space. So I think we need to think about that in the future more.
And maybe it is through the Business Advisory Committee, where we talked about the, kind of the cultural center, that kind of thing, where groups are interested still in getting together, and maybe we use the committees to identify, is this something that is historically significant to the village?
I agree, and I was thinking more of the foundation than the cultural center.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to be more judicious about that. And I talked about that a little bit last month, because here we are just kind of racing through the 4th Street project as an example, among other things, and really, when you do things at such a fast pace, you miss things like the old foundation at the Yanomoto place, at their old business place. The other thing I was going to bring up is we haven't talked much about that open space bond since we passed it as a community, and there are open spaces that I think we ought to be looking at, and we brought this up at the CAC meeting a little bit today. And so I think we really need to spend a little more time looking at open space and deciding what we want to do, because we have that bond and we can use it. And I think someone actually brought that up earlier tonight at the discussion in the beginning of the meeting. So I think that's really important, and it's something we heard from the constituents repeatedly in 2022, and we need to be more serious about that. We seem to spend a lot of money and effort on roadway projects, but we forget about some of the others. So just a few comments, and happy to talk about them.
Thank you. I just have a comment, I guess, and I wanted to say this earlier, and now that there's more women in the room than men, right. Happy International Women's Day. Oh. We have another hour and a half or so, 10:30, 11:30, yeah, 12, another hour and a half left, so congratulations to everybody. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Need a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
I knew it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting for March 8th, 2023 is now adjourned, and the time is 10:30. We did pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering about Mayor Miller Feed even.